Welcome, welcome, welcome to A Rush to Judgment with Jessica, and I'm Jessica. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever it is you are joining us from. How are we doing today? How are you? It is a wonderful, wonderful, fantabulous day. Well, guys, we've made it. We've made it to the end of this trial. Didn't think we'd do it, but we've made it. We've made it to the end of the Nicole Nachtman trial. This is the end. This is the last little bit. This is the closing arguments from both the state and the state and the defense. And then we may listen to a little bit of the jury instructions, and then we will get the verdict. So that's all going to happen on this video. God willing, nothing pops up in between, and I am able to go straight through. So, yeah. And if you are new here, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. And if you're not familiar with what we have done here, and you are just popping on for the very last video and you haven't been following along, shame, shame, tisk, tisk. But to catch you up just a tad, Nicole Nachtman, she is a young woman who is on trial for the murder of her mother and stepfather. The incident took place back in August of 2015, and her trial took place in July and August of 2019. So there was some time in between the actual incident and her trial. Not really sure what all the holdup was exactly. They didn't really get into that. And I didn't research too much on the topic. So, but we've been following along. And if you would like, you can go back and you can watch all of the videos. I did follow through with the whole thing, the good, the bad, and the boring of all of it. And you can see my full reaction to the whole trial and everything in it. And yeah, so this is it. This is the end. This is all. This is the slightly larger woman singing at the end. So let's get into it. And just a reminder that I am not by any means a legal expert. I do not specialize in this area of anything. I'm just here to give my commentary and, judge. I sit and I judge the trial like I would be maybe one of the jurors and see what that would be like. And I comment and I, maybe add a little education. If you learn something, that's cool. If you don't, that's cool too. So also let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. For sure, like and comment, even if you just watch for a little bit here and there. Always make sure and like whatever video that you watch. It's always helpful. Gets the video out and it gets the video to spread and the content to spread. So that's helpful. So yeah, let us get into the closing arguments and get going, because I am excited to see.
Jury present, seated, everyone else may be seated at the time. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, good morning, welcome back, and happy Friday. First, before we begin today, my normal question: has anybody done any research related to the case, discussed the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, or
No, I have not.
exposed to any reports about the case outside of the courtroom?
Nope.
By show of hands. All right, let the record reflect there are no hands. I have a couple of things I'm going to let you know, but first I'm going to ask the state if there's anything else in their rebuttal case. All right, state having rested their rebuttal case, ladies and gentlemen, the next stage of the proceedings, as you may recall from the preliminary instructions I gave you, is the closing arguments of the attorneys, which they are going to do in just a moment. I have gone ahead and indicated to the bailiffs that they are to order you lunch because you will be deliberating during lunchtime today. So we're going to provide you lunch. Don't get too excited. It's probably just sandwiches from the counter over here. But we will provide you lunch. I only regret not telling you
I like
that
sandwiches.
yesterday, so that if you all bring in lunch, you didn't bring it in. But we will provide you lunch in the jury room during deliberations. So I just wanted to let you know that. I do have one brief instruction that I will read to you before the attorneys begin their closing arguments. And it is as follows. Both the state and the defendant have now rested their case. The attorneys now will present their final arguments. Please remember that what the attorneys say is not evidence or your instruction on the law. However, do listen closely to their arguments. They are intended to aid you in understanding the case. Each side will have equal time, but the state is entitled to divide this time between an opening argument and a rebuttal argument after the defense has given its closing argument. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Derry, you may proceed.
Thank you. May it please the court, counsel, Ms. Nachtman. Good morning. I shot them. I shot Mom and Bob. I didn't think I could do it. I shot Bob. We are here today because of Nicole Nachtman's words and actions between August the 18th and August the 20th of 2015. She had no reason at all to kill Robert Deans, but for the fact that he stood in the way of her fully executing the trap that she was setting for her mother. When Nicole Nachtman made the choice to kill Robert Deans and Miriam Deans, she did so in a way that equates to first-degree premeditated murder. And ultimately, the state is asking that you follow the oath that you took as jurors and that you apply the law that His Honor is going to give you. Apply that to the evidence that you have heard during these 2 days of trial. She didn't thank
them for being there.
And that you find Ms. Nachtman guilty of 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. His Honor is going to give you all of the instructions that apply in this case. And ultimately, you will receive 2 jury instructions as to murder in the first degree. One for Robert Deans and one for Miriam Deans. What I want to focus on in this instruction is the definition as to premeditation. Killing with premeditation is killing after consciously deciding to do so. The decision must be present in the mind at the time of the killing. The law does not fix the exact period of time that must pass before the premeditated intent to kill and the actual killing. The period of time must be long enough to allow only reflection by the defendant. The premeditated intent to kill must be formed before the killing. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, the question of premeditation is a question of fact to be determined by you and the evidence that you have been presented. It will be sufficient proof of premeditation if the circumstances of the killing and the conduct of the accused convince you beyond a reasonable doubt of the existence of premeditation at the time of the killing. So let's talk about those actions. Let's talk about how we get here to the ultimate conclusion of premeditated murder. It starts on August the 18th. On August the 18th of 2015, we know that Miriam Deans checked into a hotel in Jacksonville, Florida. You've heard testimony that Miriam Deans was a captain in the Navy and that she regularly traveled as a part of her job. She regularly was gone for various periods of time away from her Carrollwood home. On August the 18th, she checked into a hotel in Jacksonville, leaving her husband, Robert Deans, and her daughter, Nicole Nachtman, at their Carrollwood home in Tampa. We know that at some point on August the 18th, Robert Deans went to Publix, went to China Walk, and went to Pet Boys. We know through a video that's been introduced into evidence that somewhere around 8 o'clock on August the 18th, 8 o'clock in the evening, is one of the last times Robert Deans is seen alive. We know from the testimony of the neighbors that Robert Deans is not seen after sometime that day. So sometime between August the 18th at 8 o'clock in the evening and August the 19th at roughly 9 o'clock in the evening, Nicole Nachtman makes the decision to go into the home and obtain what is believed to be, what I believe the evidence has shown to be, a .380 caliber pistol, Robert Dean's own gun. And then at some time on that day, between that day and the following day, there is no struggle, there is no fight. Nicole Nachtman points a gun and kills Robert Deans, execution style, with one bullet to the back of his head, right through his ball cap. We know Robert Deans collapses, whether he's in a chair or standing up, and the result of the collapsing is he breaks several ribs. We know from the testimony again that there was no struggle involved. Those are the only injuries to Robert Deans. And then it begins. After Nicole Nachtman has executed the first step in her plan to trap her mother and kill her mother, she's got to work on continuing the plan and cleaning it up so that her mother can walk right into it with no knowledge of what's happened to Robert. So what does Nicole Nachtman do? She begins the cleanup process. We know that there's a bottle of bleach in the garage right near the laundry room. We know that there is extensive efforts taken to clean this home. If you recall the testimony of Shelby Garman, the crime scene technician, where was the blood? The phenolphthalein test indicated positive results for the couch, the recliner, the sink faucet, the sponge, various places in the kitchen, the mop bucket. She uses all of these things to clean up as best she can. There's blood on the walls, blood on the refrigerator. And what did FDLE later tell you? That blood on the refrigerator is Robert Dean's blood. That blood on the kitchen floor is Robert Dean's blood. She's cleaning. She's using whatever she is, the sponge, the mop bucket, the bleach, to eliminate any sign of the execution that she's just performed. In the process of this, she has to make the decision to drag Robert Dean's 6'3", 215-pound body into the back bedroom. She's going to drag it through the house into a bedroom, wrap it in blankets, wrap it in a comforter, close the door and lock it. Continue her cleanup. And in the process, she leaves a bloody fingerprint on the wall. Because what did the evidence show you? That fingerprint on the wall was Nicole Nachtman's, and a swab from that same location, according to almost invisible to the naked eye. But Ms. Garman is able to see it and enhance it with Amido Black and discover the bloody thumbprint that she left behind during her cleanup. What else did she do when she cleaned up? She put laundry in. The plaid shirt that Robert Deans is wearing in the Publix video is found wet in the washing machine. The blue and white Titleist hat that Robert Deans is wearing when he's killed with one gunshot to the back of the head is being washed in the washing machine. She's making active decisions to clean up any trace of the murder that she just committed. Sometime between August 18th and August 19th, again at approximately 9 o'clock, these are the actions of Ms. Nachtman. And so it continues. On August the 19th of 2015, Ms. Nachtman makes a call to Florida State. Find out what's going on with her housing. Because remember, Nicole Nachtman has Florida prepaid. Her dormitory housing has already been paid for. She just has to get it lined up. And no, she hasn't done it yet. She's late. So she makes a call to find out what's going on with her housing. They tell her we don't have a space yet. And then soon after, very soon after, at approximately 11:30 on August the 19th, the evidence has shown that she receives an email from Jessica Gilbert at Florida State. You got your housing. We have a spot for you. At 11:30 on August the 19th, some almost 20 hours before she kills her mother, she gets her housing. So she gets her housing. And what does she do? Mom's still not there. Mom's still in Jacksonville. So Nicole Nachtman on her own. Stepdad is dead. She now takes the contract that they sent her. She fills it out, puts her phone number, her Gmail email address on there, puts her mom as the contact person. She fills it out. She's getting ready to send it back in. She knows she also has to obtain a deposit. She can't ask Robert because he's dead. And she can't ask her mother because she's planning to kill her. So she goes to her cousin David Lear's house. She goes to David's house. And at this point, in Nicole Nachtman's mind, she's so aware of what she plans to do. She's telling David, can I borrow the money? No problem. Thank you. Gets the money. Hugs him goodbye. He thinks it's a little strange, you know. She really wants to hug goodbye. It's not necessarily what they always do. She makes it a point to say goodbye to him. And then what else does she tell him? He says, when am I going to see you again? When are we going to see you? Oh, probably around Thanksgiving, the next natural break or holiday for a college student. That's what she tells him. Lies. So she gets the money from him. She then goes, she takes that money, she deposits it into a bank, sends it to Florida State, and approximately 5 o'clock on August the 19th, after 5 p.m., because Ms. Gilbert testified she didn't receive it till the next day, after 5 p.m. on August the 19th, she sends back her contract to confirm her housing at Florida State. Now the contract's in, her housing's set up. There is nothing at all preventing Nicole Nachtman, now that she submitted her contract, from getting in her car and driving to Florida State. Only thing preventing her is that she hasn't followed through on her plan to kill her mother. So
she has a
she stays
dead
at the house.
stepdad in the house.
At some point between August the 19th and August the 20th of 2015, Nicole Nachtman makes a phone call to her mother. We heard testimony that they talk, and she tells him something about having talked to her roommates that she's going to be meeting. And then what else do we know happens on August the 20th? Well, at some point on August the 20th, Nicole Nachtman has the forethought in her mind to think, I've killed Robert about a day ago now. Mom's probably wondering where he is. I'm going to check his email. She has the forethought to think, I need to go into Robert Dean's email account, Yahoo email account, so that I can check and see if Mom's trying to reach him, because he's not answering the phone because he's dead in the bedroom. So she goes onto his email account. And her internet history, her search history, it's all in evidence. How to change a password on Yahoo. Nicole Nachtman has a Gmail account. The evidence has shown. How to change that password on Yahoo. And then what do we see? We see an email forwarded to her that was an email from Miriam Deans to Robert Deans trying to reach you. Your phone's going to voicemail. So these are thoughts in her mind. I need to do this, to check this email, to make sure that I try and get my mom here without suspecting anything wrong. She replies to the email, forwards the email to her account, and we know that at some point on that same day in the afternoon, Elizabeth Ray sees Nicole Nachtman at that home doing something by her window. We know that Nicole Nachtman remains at that home in Carrollwood until approximately 5:53, when her Garmin GPS unit inside of her car shows that the car is now at a park approximately 1.5 miles north of her home, and the Garmin GPS unit is now turned off at 5:53 p.m. So again, this entire time, now at almost 6 o'clock on August the 20th, Nicole Nachtman, following through on her plan, coming from that park back to her home in Carrollwood, about 1.5 miles away, always keeping the gun the whole time, never knowing when her mom's actually going to walk in, but waiting for her. Even though she's told her family she's going back to school, has got her housing at Florida State, and mom's hours away in Jacksonville, waits for her to come back because she's got to follow through with her plan. So what happens next? Well, we know Nicole at some point is sitting in the family room watching a movie that's paused when law enforcement arrives, eating a bag of Cheetos that's sitting there on the couch, open. Lights are all on in the house. No signs of a struggle obvious to law enforcement. No signs of blood immediately obvious to law enforcement. Done a great job of cleaning it up so that when mom walks in the door, puts her purse and her keys down, no reason to suspect anything's wrong. And at that point, Nicole Nachtman, still with the gun in her hand, the same gun that she used 24 hours ago to kill her stepfather, with the same gun in her hand, puts 3 bullets in her mother. She doesn't miss because there's 3 shell casings found at the scene, and there's 3 projectiles recovered from Miriam Deans. Torso, abdomen, neck. Puts 3 bullets in her mom with no issue. And then she gets in her car. She leaves to go to her car because remember, her car's not there, because had it been there, her mother would have known that she was still home. So her car couldn't be there in order for her plan to work. So she now walks or runs the distance to her car, somewhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock at night. And the next thing that we know is that at 10:19 p.m. on Thursday, August 20th, her Garmin GPS starts back up and she drives to Tallahassee. Mom's dead, Robert's dead, her plan's been followed through on, now she can go live her life. So she drives to Tallahassee. The phone records and the GPS coordinates document that at some point she stops at rest areas for some period of time, perhaps to sleep, continues her drive. And at approximately 8:15, 8:20 the next morning, Nicole Nachtman gets a call from Detective Messer. Starting to call the family, starting to put the pieces together, figure out what's going on. We've talked a lot during this trial. We've talked a lot during this trial about the words of Nicole Nachtman, about the things Nicole Nachtman has said to experts in interviews after this offense, years after this offense in some cases. We've heard a lot about the different things Nicole Nachtman said. What does Nicole Nachtman say to Detective Messer less than 12 hours after she kills her mother? We know this phone call is at approximately 8:20, 8:30 in the morning, less than 12 hours after she puts 3 bullets in her mother. What does Nicole Nachtman say to Detective Messer? What is her voice? What does she sound like? What is her thought process? Let's listen.
Hello?
Is this Nikki?
It is?
Nikki, this is Detective Messer. I'm with the Sheriff's Office in Huntsville County. I was glad actually that you answered. Are you okay?
I just got a call from my uncle.
Okay, and I was just going to tell you, I called spoke to your uncle and spoke to your grandmother. And I want to make sure you're okay, obviously, but I guess your uncle told you what's happened?
Is he going to the hospital?
Well, she's not doing very well. But I needed to talk to you. You had said that you had been staying at your grandmother's house. I guess.
Yeah, I do have some kind of story. I didn't tell that.
How are you?
I think about, a lot, a day or two ago.
A day or two or so?
Yeah, because I went to, Tuesday and Monday.
Okay. Well, anyway, I can meet you up there and talk to you. I need to share some pictures to you. And it's going to be done by the immediate next of kin. In fact, I don't have to do this beforehand, but can you confirm your social security number with me?
Sure.
I could.
But you're not driving right now or anything like that. You're.
Actually, it don't think I am.
Are you? Okay. Well, that's fine. I mean, I just want you to get there.
I'm kind of like, I'm on campus, I don't know the area that well, other than the campus.
Okay. Well, do you know your address or where you're staying?
Yes, I'm in the fifth building, I don't think it's really the address for you, well, but I don't think,
Okay.
the streets on, so I have to walk down with the only,
So,
do you mind if I put that in for a second?
yeah, that's fine. Call me right back though, if you could, because,
Do you know what top floor you go?
no, I don't actually. And, are you on campus right now driving around or?
Yeah, I want that.
I really need to get to your dorm, sit tight and then call me back, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'll wait right till you call.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
So what does she say in that phone call with Detective Messer? I'm in Tallahassee. Oh, are you? Is his statement? Are you in Tallahassee? And what does she say? Oh, yeah, I've been here a day or two. Did he ask her how long she'd been there? She volunteers it. I've been here a day or two. Because in Nicole Nachtman's mind, she now knows law enforcement's involved. Law enforcement has discovered the deaths of my mother and stepfather. They're involved. I've got to start working. I'm in Tallahassee. Is she actually? No, she's not. She lies. I'm in the Smith building. She knows what building she's going to be staying in, or she thinks she's going to be staying in. Tells him things, asks him questions. Is she in the hospital? What hospital? Having a conversation with him, responding to his questions, asking him questions back, continuing her plan. So after that, Nicole Nachtman is now well aware that the police are involved and that the police are working and doing their investigation. So what is the next thing she does? The next phone call is to Eric Lear. Soon after, let's listen to what she says in this call. Still less than 12 hours after the death of her mother.
Yeah,
Did you call the detective?
yeah, I left a voicemail with the address.
Oh, the address? Okay.
Yeah.
What's the address?
It's 78, Chieftain Way.
Right, 78 Chieftain Way?
Yeah,
Is it like Chieftain, G-A-N?
yeah,
Chieftain Way?
Tallahassee,
Tallahassee.
313.
Okay. Well, so you haven't talked to him yet?
Oh, I talked to him when he called me, and when he called me first, and he called,
Right.
and I told him that I was going to end this because, you know, I caught someone else and I walk around to my room kind of thing, and, you know, so it's kind of like, I didn't know the actual address, and I just keep looking up Sally's address for when I was living in Sally Lane, but I live in Smithfield now.
You haven't Smith didn't you? Hey, so you even know what's going on?
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, because he called me back, and he said that your mom, you know, is gone. That, you know, apparently something happened to your mom and she's passed away. Are you there, Nikki? Nikki? I'm sorry. He's making, listen to me. Are you okay?
Yeah.
He's making it sound like you were involved or something.
Understand?
Well, how long have you been there?
That would be today.
Oh, you didn't meet on Wednesday like you told Grandma?
No, Mom was kind of mad at Grandma.
Oh, when was the last time you were at your mom's? So.
I left late on I left really late on, I think, the 19th or something.
Can you mean Wednesday you left there?
Yeah, I left really late.
Was it Tuesday or Wednesday maybe?
It was the 19th,
The 19th for sure? Or what time you left? Did you leave about?
maybe 6 or 7.
Friday night?
Yeah, I was going to go later, but, you know, I was going to go early Mondays.
Okay, did you need a plane ticket or what's going on?
I don't know, I'm going to see if I can come.
You let him come up there?
Yeah,
Okay, are you gonna be at that address?
yes, I am.
Okay, well, you better talk to Nikki, because I don't know what's going on, so, hold on, let me see if Grandma wants to talk to you, hold on a second. Are you alone, Nikki?
Well, I'm outside.
I know, but are you alone?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, because the detective told me he thinks somebody hurt your mom intentionally. Are you listening?
Yeah, I mean, Mom does have, I don't know, Mom doesn't get along with, you know, as many supposed things.
Well, who do you think would have a reason to hurt her?
I don't know, she was having problems with people at work, she said.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, he keeps with Bob, you know, they always sort of go,
Are you okay?
yeah, I'm fine. I mean, no, I'm not.
Okay, so you sure the last time you were there was Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I just want to make sure that you call him, because he needs to talk to you, Nikki. You know what I'm saying?
I called him off the message.
I don't want to believe it, you know what I'm saying? But they're making it sound like you're involved somehow. You're not, are you, Nikki?
No,
You sure?
I'm sure.
You're not dating somebody or
No, I don't even have a boyfriend.
anyway. I just want to make sure, because, you know, it looks, I don't, you know, we want to help you, but, you know, you got to be straight with us at least to tell us, you know, if anything happened over there. So you left Wednesday at 6 p.m. for sure?
Yeah, I'm 6.
And you went straight to Tallahassee, or where are you?
I'm in Tallahassee.
I think, okay. I think you're in Brooksville. You're supposed to go from school in Brooksville.
I don't know.
Where's your school at?
Tallahassee.
Okay, well, you know that. My Florida State, okay. I thought you said Brooksville or Gainesville.
No, I didn't say Brooksville. Well, yeah, see, so
All right, well, listen, the detective told me that you haven't called him back. So be sure you called the number I gave you?
Yeah.
And you heard his name on the voicemail?
Yeah, I did.
How long ago was that message?
40 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't know.
And what did you do? Tell him to call you your number or what?
I gave my number and stuff.
Okay.
I'm gonna call him again.
Okay, Nikki, what's the number that I gave you? What's the number?
What's that? Are you going to leave?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know where you got the number. Here's 36. Okay, say what? You ready?
Did you hear the guy's, the detective's name on the voicemail? Yeah, 365. The other number you called, wasn't that a voicemail? Somebody's name on there?
I think something called Messer. I thought it was like Detective Messer.
Okay. All right, we'll call this number because maybe I gave you the wrong number, but that's the number I got on the card. So call this number right. Hey, call right now, Nikki, so we can put an end to this. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been talked about throughout this trial of Nicole Nachtman's thought processes, the way of talking, and the things that she said to people after this offense. I submit to you that the best evidence of Nicole Nachtman's thought process are those statements on those calls less than 12 hours after she murdered her mother. She has absolutely no trouble answering the questions. His name is Detective Messer. This is the phone number I called. I left a voicemail. She gets the number back from him. She gives the address of where she is, what dorm she's staying in. She follows along in a logical manner, having that conversation with both Eric Lear and Detective Messer. That is the best evidence of what's going on in Nicole Nachtman's mind, closest in time to when she committed these crimes. And what does she say? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, no, I'm not. Nicole Nachtman's fine. She's fine with what she's done, but she knows that she shouldn't be. She has the thought to know, I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't act like I'm fine. What else does she say? Less than 12 hours after she killed her mother. Well, she had a lot of people who didn't like her. She's already thought, the police are investigating me. They're on the phone with me. I got to try and put this on someone else. Those are conscious thoughts of a murderer. She knows what she did, and she's got to try and play it off. There are people that didn't like Mom. And, Mom and Robert, they had issues too. These are things that she's already thought about in her mind. These are not disorganized, illogical thoughts. These are not hallucinations. After these phone calls that we just heard, what else do we know happens that morning? At some point around 9 o'clock in the morning, she checks in with Christina Chiotti at Florida State. Ms. Chiotti reports that she seems fine. There's no obvious concern to her, that nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We also know from her roommates that she encountered later that morning at Florida State that she gave them various stories. Mom's in an accident. My mom just died. The police are coming to talk to me. We know that at some point on that morning, she also calls her best friend, Laura Hesmer, and says to her, thank you. Thank you for having been a good friend to me. She knows exactly what she's done and what's happening. And lastly, who do we know that she talks to on August the 21st? Joey Carey. Her most trusted confidant, her best friend. What does she tell Joey?
I don't know. I can't hear you.
I shot them.
No.
I shot Mom and Bob. I didn't think I could,
Shot Mom and Bob.
but I shot Bob. And when she first gets on the phone with Joey, before she even admits to what she's done, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you, Joey. Because she knows what she's done and she knows she's going away for it. I'm going to miss you. Nicole, why are you going to miss me? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Oh, gosh, no. No, that's not what I'm thinking about. That's what she says to Joey Carey. There are no suicidal thoughts in her mind when she talks to Joey. You thinking about hurting yourself? No, I wouldn't do that. I shot them. And what does Joey say? She's proud of herself. She actually sounds like she's proud of it. And he continues to talk to her. What else does she say? You can call me a beast, but don't call me a monster.
What's the difference?
And what's one of the last things she says? If only I would have gotten the news earlier, I wouldn't have had to do it. If only she would have gotten the news about her housing earlier, she wouldn't have had to set the trap that she set for her mother to walk right into so that she could kill her and eliminate her from her life and eliminate the way that she hampered Nicole from living the life the way she wanted to live it. Eliminate her from the picture. And she killed Robert first for no reason, but that he stood in her way of executing her plan. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not unsympathetic to mental illness. And it is not disputed that Nicole Nachtman has a mental illness. But her mental illness did not justify the execution-style murders of Robert and Miriam Deans between August the 18th and August the 20th of 2015. And based on that, we are asking that you find her guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Thank you.
Members
Yeah.
of the jury, you've now heard all the evidence. And what you've heard are
This
two
is the
very different
defense now.
pictures of what the Deans and Lear family was like, about the household and environment that Nicole Nachtman grew up in. The state tried to paint a picture, and I emphasize the word tried, of a happy home in Carrollwood that involved a roof, a pool, shelter, food, material things.
I mean, I didn't really
But
get the whole
picture
happy
that was
home.
painted and supported by the evidence was that of a very different environment. The accurate picture that was painted during this trial, documented by family members, documented by teachers and school psychologists, testified to by people who encountered Nicole Nachtman in college, people who saw Nicole on a daily basis and made observations throughout her entire life. And the accurate picture that was painted in this trial is an environment that was riddled with abuse, primarily psychological abuse, which impacted Nicole Nachtman and led to her developing a severe mental illness. What we ask is that you ask yourselves these very two important questions. If everything was so perfect as the state has tried to suggest these past 2 weeks,
They didn't
then why are we
suggest
here?
that.
Ask yourselves this question. Do happy and perfectly normal children, teenagers, college students wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to shoot my parents today for no reason whatsoever? Does that make sense? Happy, loved, developed teenagers, college students wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm going to execute my
That's never
plan
really
as
been
the
their
state wants you to
stance.
believe, and shoot
They've
my mother
never
and my stepfather for no reason whatsoever.
They've never said that she had a happy home
What caused this happy, fun-loving child
or
that everybody testified to in this trial,
a
even the
stable
state judges,
home.
to go from this?
They've never argued that really.
During jury selection,
Nor
Nicole
have they said
emphasized
she
the
is
importance
well rounded.
of not formulating any opinions or conclusions until you heard all of the evidence. Each and every one of you were promised or were selected because you promised her you would do that. The state told you in their opening statement that when this case began, that Nicole's mom was providing her everything. Room, board, college, computers. And so because Nicole Nachtman just didn't want to face responsibility, she shot her mom. Members of the jury, if it was that simple, we wouldn't be here. If it was that simple, you wouldn't have sat through 2 weeks of testimony and evidence.
Yeah.
Now, the state
I
did
would've.
acknowledge in their opening statement that Nicole Nachtman did not have an easy life. But what the state has refused to acknowledge through this entire trial is that Nicole Nachtman was not a normal college student. The state has made every attempt to paint this perfect picture that just isn't supported by the evidence.
I don't see any perfect picture that they painted of her. Neither one of you have painted
Despite
a
what the
perfect
state
picture of
attempted
her.
to show you in their case, you've now been provided with the entire picture of Nicole Nachtman's life. A childhood that began with a custody battle, turmoil between her biological mother and biological father. A childhood that ended with her being ripped at the age of 3 from her biological father and never having contact with him again until she was arrested. A child who at the age of 3 not only gets ripped from her biological father's life, but at the same time, and why this is important, Joseph Carey runs away. Remember, Nicole Nachtman's 3, Joseph Carey is about 15, and they're 12 years apart. Now again, the state made
She had no
every
idea
attempt
about that.
to minimize what running away is. I even think Mr. Terry asked Joseph Carey, well, you didn't really run down the street, right? You just got out of the car and left. He left the state of Virginia and moved to Florida to be in the comfort of his grandmother, his uncles, and the family that loved and supported him.
Lots of
He
teenagers do
left
that.
his school in Virginia. He left his friends in Virginia.
There's
He
stability.
left his with the stress and turmoil that was surrounding him at that time. He told you, I ran away because my mom was divorcing my biological father, and the custody battle between Ronald Nachtman and my mother had become unbearable. That's what he told you. Guess who else he left? His 3-year-old sister to fend for herself.
That's not his
At the time, his
responsibility.
brother Kevin was still alive. Because remember, Kevin doesn't die until 2003. The brother he said he was the closest with, they were a year apart in age. And Joseph Carey felt the need to get out of that house. He never went back. He told you he stayed in Florida with his grandmother until he graduated from high school, and then he joined the military.
His brother and sister are not his responsibility.
That is not the perfect environment the state has tried to suggest.
They never suggested that. Objection. Misstating the evidence.
We can get into word
Misstating
games
the
about
testimony.
what the word runaway means. But I think the
Assumes
evidence speaks
facts,
for
not an
itself.
evidence. Something.
Joseph Carey, at the age of 14 or 15, made the conscious decision to leave his mother's home and never go back.
Some kids do
Why
that.
is that important? Because Joseph Carey never lives in the same house again with Nicole Nachtman and their mother after she's 3. He's not in the home when she's 4. He's not in the home when she's 5.
Are we going to go through
He's
the
not in
whole...
home
Oh,
when
for
she's
fuck's
6,
sake.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And then in 2003, when Kevin dies, Nicole is literally by herself with her mother. So what did Joseph Carey tell you about his mother? She was tough. She would belittle us. She would say her children are a disgrace to her. She constantly focused on Nicole's weight. She fat shamed her. She made her get liposuction. Despite the fact that every single person who knew Nicole her entire life said she was never overweight. To him, those weren't a big deal because that's just how mom was. He wasn't there every day.
Very good. Thank
But
you.
members of the jury, you're not here to
Jesus
interpret
Christ.
how Joseph Carey may have interpreted his mother's actions. You're not here to determine whether Joseph Carey was physically or
Then stop
psychologically abused.
fucking talking about him.
You're not here to examine how Miriam Deans' actions affected Joseph Carey. You're here to determine how they affected Nicole Nachtman.
You're fucking yelling, and I don't appreciate it.
I anticipate the state's going to get up here and tell you Nicole wasn't beaten every day. Neighbors never reported yelling or fighting. The police were never called. She never had to go to the doctor. Even Dr. Heidi told
shouldn't
you,
do that.
this isn't the worst case of physical abuse that I've seen. But what did she say was the definition of psychological and verbal abuse? Her definition, the renowned expert in the field, says words that wound.
Words matter.
She then defined psychological abuse are words and behaviors that undermine a child's sense of self and safety in the world.
Very good.
Members of the jury, if this doesn't undermine a child's sense of self,
Oh, it's
I
the
don't know what does.
liposuction pictures. Shit, I would have loved to have
to someone
liposuction.
like Nicole Nachtman, who from an early age, as the records indicated, had been picked on in school,
And for my
bullied,
mom to pay for it?
never able to make
What?
friends, never
Yeah.
able to fit in,
As I sit here and eat donuts.
having attended 13 different schools in 13 years of school, because you can only go to school from 5 to 18. Kindergarten, you're about 5, you graduate high school in 18. 13 years and 13 different schools. Nicole needed a safe environment to come home to. She needed somewhere where her mother would protect and love her, not beat her down, and not damage her self-esteem even more.
Sorry if you can hear background noise. My son is
Miriam
playing a
Dean's
game.
fat comments, fat shaming, you need LASIK, you need lipo, weigh yourself. Let's talk about these text messages, and this is State's Exhibit 70. You can go to page 335.
Oh, yay.
You need to weigh yourself to get an idea where you are. At 5 feet, you should be 100 pounds. Add 5 pounds for every 1 inch after that. Get Bob to determine your height. So now Bob's involved.
Just to see how tall she is. Shit.
Those words, those actions by Miriam Deans for Nicole Nachtman were just as traumatizing as Miriam Deans just got a baseball bat and beat her with it every day.
Really?
Dr. Heidi told you the most significant thing about words that wound and psychological abuse is when it comes from a parent.
I mean, I understand.
Your own mother.
Words hurt, but
That's what makes it so damaging.
she didn't call her a fat ass bitch all the time, did she?
How do
Even
we know
if she
the
did, that's
traumatizing effect Miriam
that's
Deans'
real mean.
actions and words had on Nicole? You saw a video of it yesterday. To this day, 4 years after her mother's death in 2019, she still sobs and bawls when she's talking about her mother.
You said balls.
And she's describing these instances of abuse. In 2019, you saw on that video, it's like she's reliving it every time she has to talk about it. You saw it. I'd submit to you that's about the most genuine piece of evidence you've seen.
I don't know.
The state has tried to minimize the abuse, minimize the traumatizing effect that it had on Nicole Nachtman. But that video speaks for itself. Dr. Heidi explained to you the 12 characteristics which are common in severely abused kids who kill their parents. She talked about the 12 characteristics with you, just to name a few: the pattern of family violence, the youth's attempt to obtain help from others fail, the youth's efforts to escape the family situation via suicide attempts, possibly running away. The youth is isolated. Home life becomes increasingly intolerable. The youth feels trapped and helpless. The youth loses control due to their inability to cope. The youth has no criminal history. A gun is available. And after the parent's death, it's a relief. These aren't 12 characteristics that Dr. Heidi came up with after evaluating Nicole Nachtman. These came out of a thoroughly researched book she authored several years ago. And guess who else agreed that those are common characteristics found in severely abused children who kill their parents? The state's doctor.
Oh my God.
Also keep in mind that by all accounts, Joseph Carey was stronger and more equipped to deal with his mother.
Why? Because he was a
able to
boy?
stand up to her and run away.
That's
as fast as he could
sexist.
from Virginia. He's now in the military with a family, successful. He was stronger and more equipped.
My phone
than
over
Nicole
here
Nachtman
plugged
ever
in.
was.
It's not plugged into the wall though. Can't charge
he ran
like
away
that.
and never looked back. This is the same person who
Jesus.
immediately after Nicole Nachtman's arrest, or prior to her arrest, but as he's talking to her on the phone, wants to call her immediately to make sure she's not going to harm herself. Who immediately after she's arrested contacts the family and says, we need to help her. We need to get her a lawyer. Because in his mind, he knew something had to have driven his sister to do this.
No, he said, what are we doing? Are we
He tells
helping
Nicole
her?
Nachtman when law enforcement gets there, ask for a lawyer and do not talk. And what does she do? She does exactly what he tells her. A week after her arrest or 2 weeks after her arrest, when he visits her in the jail and you saw the video, he tells her, Nicole, do what makes you happy. Right in jail if you want. This person who had just killed his mother and shot her 3 times in a driveway, he's talking to and saying, Nicole, do what makes you happy. Don't worry about your weight. Don't worry about how you look in the mirror. Who now says 4 years later, if she had just called me, I would have helped her. If she had just called the family, they would have helped her. He saw how his mother treated his sister his entire life, the times he was around. He saw Nicole get liposuction. He saw changes in Nicole in middle school. She was being bullied. She wasn't the same. He told his mother.
Every kid changes in middle school.
And so far, there's been absolutely no evidence that Miriam Deans did anything. He saw how his mother belittled Nicole and called her fat. And he did nothing. When his mom said, oh, that's just the wrong friends, he accepted that.
So it's his fault too.
He'd take his sister in for a few weeks over the summer at his mom's request. but then send her back right to the same environment.
She's not his
Even the summer before
responsibility.
this incident in 2015,
She was a
Nicole
fucking
Nachtman spent
adult.
3 weeks with him in Washington State.
She was
He told you,
21.
I noticed problems with her hygiene. I would have to tell her to bathe. She was hiding food. I had to drag her out of the room to take her places. And what does he do when the summer break is over? Sends her back to the home of Miriam Deans. He told you a story about something as silly as Nicole Nachtman buying a sword at a Renaissance festival, and she was petrified of her mom finding out. Now, I don't want to minimize the tragedy that Joseph Carey suffered when his mother was killed.
But she spent money
However, his failure
on
to
frivolous
acknowledge
shit,
what was
probably.
happening to his sister her entire childhood
And she was supposed
must
to use it on
be
something else.
considered by you in evaluating his credibility. So let's talk about the family members who did try to intervene,
Oh, her uncle.
who did see signs of Nicole's mental deterioration
Your witnesses.
and abuse by her mother. Let's start with George Lear, Miriam Deans' brother. Now, again, I am in no way minimizing that these men lost their sister, tragically. And I'm sure common sense tells everyone that they did not want to come into this courtroom and disparage their sister. They had no motive to do that. They had no interest in the case. But what did George Lear tell you? In 21 years of Nicole Nachtman's life, he saw Miriam Deans and Nicole be affectionate one time. Painting a house or something. Not at Christmas, not at Thanksgiving, not for a birthday party he may have attended for Nicole. One time in 21 years. George Lear wasn't just somebody who saw Nicole and Miriam every once in a while. He told you, I helped my mother with her. I would take her to school. I would drive her places. I would take her to the Air Academy or pick her up at the bus stop on the way back, on the way home on the weekends. I visited the apartment she lived in high school, where she lived by herself and slept on a mattress on the floor.
So why is he
So this
not more
wasn't somebody who was
responsible
just
than the
seeing
brother?
Nicole Nachtman every
And
once
he
in a
didn't
while.
fucking do anything
And in
either.
21 years, he saw Miriam Deans and Nicole Nachtman act like a mother and daughter should one time.
How should a mother and daughter act?
More importantly, he told you about his observations about Nicole's fear of her mother.
But he didn't fucking do anything either, did
He
he?
told you that "don't tell
Don't forget to
mom"
say
became
that.
the common phrase around the Lear house. Nicole's other uncle, Eric Lear, also told you.
He didn't do
Same
shit
thing.
either. Don't forget to say
Common
that.
sense tells us he didn't want to come in and disparage his sister. There's been no motive established on the part of Eric Lear. There's been no interest in how this case should be decided by anything that was brought out with Eric Lear. Eric Lear had the most contact, I'd say, out of all the brothers or the uncles, because he lived at his mother's home, Nicole's grandmother's home, off and on for periods throughout her childhood. He also told you he would drive his mother around because she didn't have a driver's license. So he spent a lot of time around Nicole during her childhood. His observations of Nicole are critical. From day one, when he spoke to the police right after Nicole's arrest, he used the word bad. She looked like a battered woman.
Well,
This
she
wasn't
does.
after we had hired doctors and had opinions on battered child syndrome. This was at the time of Nicole's arrest. His description of Nicole Nachtman to police is she looks like a battered woman.
Should I look like a battered woman? I'm not.
He
but I
described
look
how
like
she's
one.
unkept, disheveled, smelled.
Well, I don't
He
smell.
told police, I saw her talking to herself. I saw her
People
talking
do.
to people who weren't there. Hiding food. He told you he told his sister
Yeah,
his
there's food under
concerns,
my
and
desk.
she brushed them off and did nothing. That has been
If I don't
Eric
hide
Lear's
food, my kids
testimony
take
from the
it.
moment he talked to the police, in deposition, and in this week in trial.
And then I don't get it.
He told you about an incident at a restaurant after going ice skating just days before this incident. He told you they were sitting at a restaurant. Nicole was across the table in a booth, and she was literally had
Talking
her
to
head
herself.
turned and she was talking to somebody that was not there. I submit to you, however, the most powerful thing Eric Lear told you was the incident at the mall where Nicole got lost. So he called his sister and said, Miriam, where's Nicole? Did she go home? Do you have her? He ends up finding Nicole in the mall, who had just wandered off to watch some performance. And when he tells Nicole, I just called your mother, he cried on the stand, describing that incident to you. He cried at the fear in Nicole Nachtman's eyes about her mother finding out that he had called her.
But nobody did shit. You know why nobody did shit?
Why is that important?
Because she wasn't their kid. And
Because
you know
you as
why?
the jury are now being
Because
asked
they're like,
not to decide what a typical
Not my
21-year-old would have done in these circumstances, but what Nicole Nachtman had been exposed to, her mental state, and what was going on in her mind. The judge is going to read you the law when we're done, and he's going to tell you that when determining or considering the justifiable use of deadly force, you must consider the facts and circumstances as they appear to Nicole Nachtman. The years of psychological abuse, the fear of her mother finding out something so small like, I got lost in the mall. That's how you're to judge this case. The circumstances that were apparent to Nicole Nachtman.
but is she scared that
You must
mom is
also
going to
consider
kill her
the
because of
facts
Bob
the case.
or because of the dorm?
The open bedroom window. The front door of the house when police do the welfare check, that's slightly open.
But
and
if she
Miriam's
had already
purse
got
and
her
bag just on
dorm,
the
she
floor
could have
right
just
when you walk
left
in.
and went to her
The medical
dorm.
examiner's testimony who said all 3 shots, nothing, he didn't testify anything was a significant distance away. He said 1 shot was less than 2 feet away, and I actually demonstrated, and that's muzzle to wound. And that all he can say about the other 2 shots to Miriam Deans is that they were more than 2 feet away, and no other opinions as to that. We have an individual who jumped out of a bedroom window to avoid seeing her mother. Those are all facts you must consider in determining what Nicole Nachtman was thinking at the time she killed her mother.
Did they actually see her go out the window, though?
You
Did
must
anybody
evaluate
actually
this
see her
case
go out the
based
window?
on the circumstances as they appeared to her.
Is that what the neighbor said?
A person who was
recall.
mentally ill, psychotic, delusional, and who still to this day believed her mom was going to kill her.
She's full of shit. I don't believe her.
You must consider everything
Don't tell
Nicole
me
Nachtman endured as
what
a
I
child.
must do.
The years of abuse, her mental state. But what you're being asked to do is not evaluate her mental state on those phone calls Miss Derry played, or her mental state 4 years later in 2019,
No, you're supposed
or even her
to.
mental state 2 hours after the incident.
It's during the
law is
crime and
clear.
only during the
It's
crime.
her mental state at the time of the offenses. Dr. Heidi, a renowned expert in the area of kids who kill parents. She's testified in 6
Why does it do that?
published one of the leading authorities in this area. She told you that in over 30 years of being a college professor,
I don't
she
believe
has
it.
never seen anyone as impaired as Nicole Nachtman. She admitted to you this is not the most severe case of physical abuse I've ever seen. But that's not what's important. What's important is how the psychological and verbal abuse affected Nicole Nachtman. How it affected her in terms of her development, her maturity, her
Or
ability
was
to
it
stick up
because
for
of
her mother,
her development and maturity?
her ability to care for herself
That
and navigate through college.
this stuff
The fact
affected
that
her the
Nicole
way it
Nachtman
did?
wasn't beaten with a bat till she was unconscious in no way minimizes the traumatizing effect that abuse had on her.
Dear God.
Dr. Heidi repeatedly said during her testimony, when asked by Mr. Terry, it's not what a rational person would think or believe. It's what Nicole Nachtman thought or believed. Nicole Nachtman wasn't acting like a rational person in August of 2015.
Well, no shit.
She had already been deteriorating, by all accounts, since her trip back from London in 2013. She was failing. She hadn't secured a dorm.
I don't know that
She
any
had lost her bike.
rational person
Now, these
thinks
things
of
might
murder.
sound trivial to most people. But you're not in the trial of most people. You're being asked to determine Nicole Nachtman's state of mind.
Take a drink every time they say Nicole Nachtman.
All of those
Jesus
stressors
Christ.
in Nicole's mind. And remember, Dr. Heidi continuously used the term child to describe Nicole. It was like she was a child.
Because she's so
You saw Elsa
childlike.
talking about Snow Queen. You saw Elsa books that she had. There's even, I think, a pair of Elsa blue slippers in one of the photos. This wasn't the mind of a normal 21-year-old. This was the mind of a child. While rational people without a mental illness who didn't get their dorm may not think that's a huge deal. Rational people without a mental
I don't
illness
think it was a
may not
mind
think
of a
failing out of
child.
college
I
is
think
a
it was
big deal. But in
imagination.
Nicole Nachtman's mind, these stressors caused her to have a psychotic break. That's not me telling you. That's what the evidence and the mental health professionals told you. Dr. Heidi's observations and opinions, I submit to you, are critical. And the reason that is because she is the only mental health professional in this case that saw Nicole 8 days after her arrest. She told you that Nicole was still psychotic and delusional during her 6-hour evaluation of Nicole Nachtman in September of 2015. The state has repeatedly made reference to the fact that Nicole is not a battered child. She's not abused because her mom provided for her basic needs. Members of the jury, those of us that are parents, know that parenting involves so much more than food and shelter. Parenting requires nurturing.
But it doesn't have to.
It requires
By law.
encouragement. It requires a safe environment that your child who's being bullied at
As
school
long as
can
I
come home
give
to.
you food, shelter. And what else?
I want you to look at the state's
You're good. Don't bitch
Exhibit
about
48,
nothing.
which is in evidence. It's the phone records that they introduced. They're not long, but they span the dates of August 2nd through August 12th, which is kind of that time frame just before these instances. I want you to count the number of times Nicole called her mother. She called her mother 44 times.
What's
Her mom called her 13 times. The state made a point to show these text messages, State's Exhibit 7. She was putting money in her bank. She was providing for Nicole. I'm not exactly sure how many pages there are, but you're going to have it back there. And I want you to look at those text messages and count how many times the word love is used by Miriam Deans. These text messages span a much longer period. They span January of 2015 until August of 2015. That's 8 months. I'll save you some time because there isn't one single text that has the word love in it from Miriam Deans to her daughter in 8 months. You're going to find one text that has the word love in it, and it was on June 30th, 2015, and it was Nicole telling her mother she loved her. You know what the response was? Nothing.
Okay. Oh.
Your daughter is away at school in Tallahassee, 4 hours away. And we got hundreds of pages here of text messages. Weigh yourself. Don't forget. Not one text message, Nicole, I love you. And when Nicole says, Mom, I love you, nothing.
Well, maybe they said it on the phone. Said they called 44 times.
The state made a point to bring David Lear back yesterday.
My son doesn't say it on the text
They
message,
introduced
but he
3
says it every
photographs
time he
that
hangs
David
up the
Lear apparently
phone.
had accumulated.
He doesn't ever
The
answer
first set
my
of
text
photographs
messages.
were of Nicole. I think he said the oldest was about 3 or 4. And she's with her mom and she's happy. That has never been in dispute. That in her early years, she's smiling. But where are the pictures of Nicole Nachtman and Miriam Deans at Christmas?
Do we object? Yeah, you approach, absolutely.
Thank God. Do something.
Were you provided about Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthday parties?
Well, whatever it was, they lost it.
The Rose who lived next door and would hear or could see or hear the pool area of the Lear or the Dean's residence. Never heard about any barbecues, Sunday family dinners. That's
Not
what
all
a
families
child
do
needs
that.
from their mother. Love, encouragement, affection.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Let's talk about the experts. The most important fact that you heard in this trial from all three mental health professionals is that Nicole falls on the schizophrenia spectrum of disorders. All three said it. Dr. Ewing told you that he evaluated Nicole and came up with his opinions before he read Dr. Heidi's report. So he does his evaluation, he reviews the history and records, and then, which is appropriate, I'm not going to review the opinions of another mental health professional until I myself have formulated mine. And they come with the same exact diagnosis of schizophrenia for Nicole. Their opinions that she's a battered child, again, coincide. They showed you in the DSM-5 the diagnostic criteria they used for that diagnosis. And they went through each and every criteria and how it applied to Nicole, which is what a psychologist or psychiatrist is supposed to do. They told you about the delusions, the hallucinations, the disorganized speech, the disorganized behavior, the negative symptoms, the inappropriate affect, the disturbed sleep pattern. But they didn't just come up with this opinion out of the sky. They based it on records, they based it on accounts by family, and they based it on accounts by the people in college who were observing Nicole close in time to these offenses. Angelica Henwood, Jackie Roman, Laura Hessemer, Eric Lear. They told you this was a gradual process of mental deterioration in Nicole Nachtman. Dr. Ewing defined for you what auditory hallucinations are, and he provided authority in a medical journal that the screaming in her head from London is an auditory hallucination. So why is the state doctor the only one who came on the other side of that spectrum? So she's on that schizotypal, if you remember the diagram, to the left, and everybody else is on the right. Schizophrenia, the most severe mental illness in the field. I'll tell you why.
It's a very large
Because she
generalization.
stands to lose the $480,000 she has received from their office in the last several years. If she says schizophrenia, she loses work.
Come to me.
That's
If
not
she says schizophrenia,
that's not fair.
she loses her $480,000 she could then earn in the next several years.
That's objection. I don't like that argument.
Now, I submit to you that no one in this courtroom is unsympathetic to children who are abused. But our job is to defend Nicole Nachtman. But we had to ask Dr. Lazaro about her own childhood. It's not because we're not unsympathetic people. It's not because we don't recognize how important child abuse is. We've been talking about it for 2 weeks. But we had to ask her because in a case involving child abuse, where she says our client is not battered or not abused, her childhood is absolutely relevant. You know why? Because in Dr. Lazaro's mind, she turned out fine. She was abused, but she became a doctor. Not everyone's like Dr. Lazaro, and that's why we had to bring it out. Because her bias is based on her own experiences, not those of Nicole Nachtman. One of your fellow jurors in jury selection said it perfect. When we were talking about mental illness and Ms. Holt was questioning the panel, one juror says, you have to look at the individual. Not everybody had the genetic makeup Nicole Nachtman did. Not everybody had the low self-esteem Nicole Nachtman did. You have to look at the individual. Let's talk a little bit about what the state doctor told you yesterday. She was asked if Nicole's account of her mother banging her head on a table was abuse. And her response was, if it was me, I would have just counseled the parent. A third grader who is being banged, her head is being banged on a table. Now, she said, I don't dispute that didn't happen. She's going to counsel the parent. She told you that Nicole just has a personality flaw and that Miriam Deans just had a parenting style. You're fat. You need lipo. You're a skank. You need to weigh yourself. Kicking Nicole. into a fireplace until she could feel it on her back. Nicole finding a gun and pills, and Miriam's response is to show her how to use the gun. I'm not sure what kind of parenting style that is. It's abuse. If you believe the state doctor's characterization of discipline and abuse, and she testified to it at the very beginning, what she basically said is, it's discipline and not abuse as long as it's in response to something the child does. So according to the state doctor, if a child takes the car, runs away, uses drugs, and a parent beats them over the head with a bat, that's not abuse because it's in response to something the child did. That's what she told you yesterday. I'm also not sure which record she reviewed, because what she testified to yesterday is not what you heard in this courtroom. She told you that a roommate said Nicole was capable of caring for herself in college. She just chose not to. Unless I was in a different courtroom this week and last week, I missed that. Because every single person that encountered Nicole Nachtman in college that testified in this courtroom said she could not care for herself. I had to throw her mattress outside. I had talks with her, and she wasn't getting it. She told you yesterday that Joey Carey said that when Nicole stayed with him that summer in Washington prior to these offenses, that she could care for herself. Again, I must have missed that, because Joseph Carey said I had to tell her when to bathe. I had to drag her places. She was sneaking food. The state doctor, however, did use words like aggressive, demeaning, when describing how Miriam Deans talked to Nicole Nachtman. But just said, I just didn't agree with her parenting. She also said, it's not my judgment to make. You are hired to determine if Nicole Nachtman was abused and suffered from battered child syndrome, and it's not your judgment to make as to the parenting Miriam Deans exhibited. She testified Nicole is a meek person, that Miriam Deans' words were clearly hurtful to Nicole. So I guess if you decide to believe or give credence to the state doctor, her opinion is that Nicole Nachtman killed both of her parents because she didn't fit in, she liked to binge eat, she liked to overspend, and it was just a personality flaw. The state doctor knew before she ever went and saw Nicole Nachtman that doctors were saying she had schizophrenia. She knew that they had opined that Nicole was insane at the time of these offenses. She knows what the diagnostic criteria is for schizophrenia. She had the benefit of Eric Lear's deposition, who said, I saw her talking to herself. But her answer yesterday was, I just didn't ask Nicole about it. You've been given a diagnosis of schizophrenia. You know that delusions and hallucinations are part of the criteria to diagnose somebody. And your answer to that question is, I didn't ask Nicole about it? I'll let you make sense of that.
Well, that's nice of you.
I think the question many have asked is, why Robert Deans?
Because he was in the way.
I go back to my original statement when I stood up here earlier. Kids, teenagers, college students, they don't kill their parents for no reason.
So what
They
was
don't
the reason?
Wake up one day with a master plan, as the state has tried to suggest, to kill their parents.
So, Miss
What do we know
Defense
about
Attorney,
Robert
what is the
Deans?
reason?
Not a single person in the Lear family knew anything about him.
What's that mean?
If he ever went to Miriam Deans' mother's home, Nicole's grandmother's home, maybe once.
So?
Joseph Carey, Miriam Deans' son, met him or hung out with him or spent time with him 4 times in their 11-year marriage. When they got married in 2004,
He was a grown-ass man
Nicole
who
would have
lived
been
in a
8 years old.
different area.
There was no testimony from a single witness that there was ever family dinners that Robert Deans attended. Christmases, Thanksgivings. None of the photos that you've seen have Robert Deans and
Maybe
Nicole
he
in
didn't
them.
like the family.
In all those times you heard Miriam Deans was deployed or had to work, not once did anyone say Nicole stayed with him. She lived in an apartment by herself in high school
But
while
why?
Robert Deans lived in Carrollwood.
Was that the
She slept on a
agreement?
mattress.
Well, at least she didn't sleep on the floor. Did she have food, shelter? And what is the third thing?
What Robert
Clothes?
Deans did is he failed to protect Nicole
Ta-da.
from her mother.
Again,
At
that's
the
his
age of 8,
responsibility.
when he entered Nicole's life, children bond with their step-parents. You heard
Hmm,
Wesley Rowe, the neighbor, talk
not
about his
always.
stepdaughter, Elizabeth. In fact, he called her daughter and then had to correct himself and said stepdaughter. Within this very trial, you saw evidence of what a stepfather and stepdaughter's relationship should be. That is not the case with Robert Deans and Nicole Nachtman.
I'll object on that one.
A retired police officer who was in the military did nothing to protect Nicole. In fact, that text message I just referenced where Miriam Dean says, have Bob weigh you. Step-parents have a
not.
duty to protect their children just like biological parents, just like adopted parents.
She has said have Bob.
And the final thing I want to say about
Get your
Robert
height.
Deans is somebody who is in their right mind doesn't sit in a house for 24 hours with the decomposing body of her stepfather if everything is just perfect.
Nobody said she thought everything
Gary
was
addressed
perfect.
the law of premeditation with you, and I want to talk about that for purposes of first-degree murder. They're suggesting to you that this was some sort of master plan by Nicole Nachtman, the same person who you heard couldn't navigate the jail visitation from Dr. Heidi, couldn't figure out what to do when her bike went missing, talked about the Snow Queen to Detective Messer,
Crazy lady didn't know where she
forgot to get housing even though she was an upperclassman. So she'd done it before. It had been done before for her. So this master plan, as they want you to believe, to support premeditation, was, as they stated, shooting Bob in the head, wrapping him in a comforter, and then dragging him into a bedroom. Now what? This master plan of shooting her mother in the driveway where neighbors and people can hear gunshots and call the police. This master plan of driving to Tallahassee and checking into the very dorm that everyone knew she was headed to or was supposed to be at. And then on the phone call Miss Derry played for you, telling Detective Messer her address of where he can come find her. Detective Messer in that phone call that was played for you earlier even says, I'm surprised you answered. She answers the phone and says, I just don't know my exact address because she's moving in and doesn't know the dorm, which is not unreasonable. Looks it up and gives him the exact place he can find her.
does like that sound like
Oh,
somebody
and then
that
let me
is
go to my
under
cousin David's
psychosis?
house and borrow money and tell him exactly where I'm
Not
going
for
to
reals.
find you there. Now the state
Judge
made a
looks
big deal
like
throughout
he's
this trial
asleep.
about the car down the street, laying in wait, the GPS coordinates. But Elena Rowe, the neighbor, told you that when she went out for a run that night, she saw Nicole Nachtman's car parked right in front of their house at 8:15 p.m.
Do not jump from there.
because she almost walked into it.
Good choice.
Now the state attempted to say, well, you didn't tell the police that. And what did she tell you?
Or the little puppy.
I couldn't get into my house, and my family was telling me they heard gunshots. I was thinking about a few other things than whether I saw Nicole Nachtman's car.
Okay, but everybody else
As soon as
says
she
the
did,
car
she
was
ran.
down the road. She parked the car a mile and a half
The
away
law also says that
and
anything
sat
Nicole may
at
have
the
done
table
after
or
the
sat at the
fact.
chair watching a
All these
movie,
things Miss Derry spent
eating
a
Cheetos,
significant amount of time
waiting
talking
on her
about
mom to
cleaning
show
up,
up
putting
to
things in the
shoot
washer.
her.
Remember this, because the law says you cannot consider what happened after the offenses to determine premeditation. That's very, very important to remember. What Nicole Nachtman did after shooting Robert Deans and Miriam Deans cannot be considered at all by you on the issue of premeditation. Because premeditation is something that happens before.
Duh, that's why it's pre.
Members of the jury, you were chosen in this case because in jury selection, We asked each and every one of you if you could consider mental illness, if you could consider abuse, if you could consider the
I can
defense of
consider
insanity,
it.
if you
I
could
just don't
consider
think
the defense of justifiable use of deadly force. And each and every one
I
of you
don't think that
promised
that
us
is
you would.
relevant in this case. I just do not. I do not see it.
So what do we have to establish for insanity?
Oh, Jesus.
You've
We've
seen
already
this
been over
Just
this.
to review.
No, thank you.
A person is, first of all, the first sentence is very important. It's whether Nicole Nachtman was insane when the crime allegedly was committed. A person is considered to be insane when she had a mental infirmity, disease, or defect. We already know that nobody disputes number one exists. Even the state doctor says she's mentally ill. And two, because of this condition, she did not know what she was doing or its consequences.
Yes, she did.
And there you stop. You
Yes,
don't need to
she
read any
did.
more into B, because that's not what we're proceeding under. And that's why there's an or there. It's A or B. Now, the state elicited testimony yesterday about did she know it was wrong to kill somebody? That's prong B, and that's not for your consideration.
But
So let's talk about the evidence in the case that shows that Nicole Nachtman did not know what she had done or its consequences. Detective Messer himself said that he arrives at the Florida State University Police Department to question Nicole Nachtman about 2 counts of first-degree murder. She already knows he's coming. You heard the phone call, and she's exactly where they find her. He's about to question her about the killing of her parents, and within minutes of walking into the room, Nicole Nachtman starts telling him about the Snow Queen. He even stops her at one point and says, "You know your mom is dead, right? You know Bob is dead, right?" Her response is, "Yeah, I'm just trying to distract myself," and goes right back to talking. Now, Detective Messer didn't want to admit the first time when I asked him until I confronted him with his deposition. But in his mind, he believed she was not grasping what was happening. Now, the state contends that that video somehow portrays something else. But Detective Messer was in the room. And he told you, as he previously did in a deposition under sworn testimony, that she was not grasping what was happening. She was not grasping the seriousness of the situation. What other evidence do you have to suggest that Nicole Nachtman did not know the consequences of what she had done? She told Dr. Heidi that there were 4 possibilities or resolutions to her case. 1, she could be tortured. 2, she could be banished from society. 3, she would donate money to all of you all's choice for a charity. 4,
she has
would
a
keep
very
journal of her
active
behavior, and then
imagination.
finally, she used the term 4, but then she followed up and said she wanted to join the military. What did she tell her brother in the jail visit? "I'm going to buy you Christmas presents when I get out." This is a 21-year-old who has low personality development, is immature, is psychotic, is mentally ill, and she is not
We're calling her
grasping
psychotic.
what she had done or its consequences.
She's not psychotic.
Now, Ms. Holt discussed this in jury
Mental-
selection, but I want to bring it up because there's 2 different burdens in this case.
Mentally ill.
And
She's
we
not
talked at length during
psychotic.
jury selection about the burden of proof. And that as to the elements of premeditation and the elements of first-degree murder, the burden of proof by the state of Florida is beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt. But our burden for insanity is much lower, and that's in the instruction. It's
Yeah,
by
and you
clear
still
and
haven't
convincing
met it.
evidence.
So fuck off.
It's right here in this paragraph.
Well, that's the
It
crazy
defines
part.
what clear and convincing
Y'all
evidence
still
is.
couldn't
Remember,
even-
it's not beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt, like they must prove to you for first-degree murder.
And yet,
Clear and convincing evidence is evidence that is precise, explicit, lacking in confusion, and of such weight that it produces a firm belief without hesitation about the matter in issue. You had 2 trained, credible mental health professionals telling you that they believe Nicole Nachtman was insane at the time of these offenses. And unlike the state doctor,
but you
they
can
gave those
also
opinions on
take
after
into
them.
account each witness and their credibility. And I don't find
Mental
either
illness
one of
affects
them
people
credible.
differently. Insanity
I
at
don't
the time of the
agree
offense
with
doesn't
either
mean
one
Nicole
of
Nachtman
them.
needs to sit here in a straitjacket. Dr. Ewing told you about a colleague of his who was a Yale Law School graduate and professor who suffers from schizophrenia.
Because I've seen
But what Dr. Ewing
schizophrenia. I
told you is what
see
Nicole
how it
suffers from
works.
is the most severe mental illness there is.
That's not how it works.
You have been asked to make a very important decision in this case, and that's whether Nicole Nachtman is not guilty by reason of insanity. I want to read you the bottom of this instruction that the judge is going to tell you. It's the last paragraph.
So let the judge do
If
it.
your verdict is that the defendant is not guilty by reason of
Hush.
insanity, that does not necessarily mean she will be released from custody. I, the judge, must conduct further proceedings to determine if the defendant should be committed to a mental hospital or given other outpatient treatment or release. The law says that is not for your consideration. What happens to Nicole after this trial? You're to determine if you believe she had a mental disease or defect.
Don't point
that
and
because of
stop
schizophrenia,
yelling.
She didn't know what she was doing or its consequences. That's it. Judge Sabella, who has presided over this case, who has heard all the evidence and all the facts, will take all of that into consideration in determining what happens with Nicole Nachtman should you find her not guilty by reason of insanity. So do not let that cloud your judgment.
Look, I'll even
On the
slow
issue
her
of
down.
insanity, the state
And
made
she
a point
still
to
sounds
say that Nicole Nachtman told her brother, "I'll miss you."
Mean
She hugged
and
David
grumpy.
and said goodbye. She told Laura, "You've been a good friend." I submit to you that that was her suicidal thoughts. You heard evidence that, in fact, during this entire ordeal, she's suicidal. She's contemplating killing herself. She's contemplating what she's going to do about housing. She is psychotic and delusional.
What are you doing with your mouth? Stop that.
Members of the jury, if you apply what you've heard these past 2 weeks, and I mean everything you've heard, all of the witness accounts, her childhood, the records, the college students, the family, the mental health experts, the credible ones,
The credible ones.
the only verdict supported by the facts, the law, and the evidence is one of not guilty by reason of insanity as to both counts. Because when Nicole Nachtman shot Robert Deans and Miriam Deans, she was psychotic, she was delusional, she was schizophrenic, and she did not know what she was doing or its consequences. Thank you.
Yes, she
Listen,
did.
Can I get you to move the thing just so I can ask the jury? Ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen of the jury, you've been sitting there for 2 hours now. We're going to go to the state's rebuttal argument, but I just want to know if any of you need a quick restroom break or break.
Restroom.
Stretch your legs. I see
And it's a
that's
quick
okay.
restroom
sense,
break.
more all members of the jury are present. Seated, everyone else may be seated this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. Did anyone discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else? Do any research related to the case, or was anyone exposed to any reports of the case during the last break? Let the record reflect there are no hands. Again, thank you all very much. We're going to pick up where we left off, and I will ask the state to begin their rebuttal argument. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, I want to remind you all that we are here in the case of the state of Florida versus Nicole Nachtman. We are not here on the case of Nicole Nachtman versus Miriam Deans. And I can understand if you all are probably a little bit confused because at least half of Ms. Hercy Vulgara's closing dealt with Ms. Deans. Well, let me remind you all a little bit about Ms. Deans. Ms. Deans grew up in a military family. She was the only girl. She had 5 brothers. She became a nurse. She joined the Navy. She eventually made a naval captain. Miriam Deans also went through a very difficult and bitter divorce, a very difficult and bitter child custody battle, and eventually was trying to raise and provide for 3 children while working for the military. She would often have to leave her children with family in Tampa. Nicole Nachtman grew up an Army brat, basically. She was having to transfer all the time. Whenever Miriam Deans would get deployed, Nicole Nachtman needed to go somewhere. so she would bring her to Tampa so she could be with family. What else is she going to do? But yet she's going to be blamed because Nicole Nachtman had to go to so many schools. We never said, and I said it in my opening, that Nicole Nachtman did not have an easy life. I said that. We've never tried to portray a perfect picture. We never have. I've never tried to tell you, and I never argued to you up here in opening, that Miss Deans was a perfect parent. She was not. She made mistakes.
Exactly what I said.
But those mistakes, ladies and gentlemen, do not give Nicole Nachtman the right to kill her.
Exactly.
They do not. She might not have been super loving. Clearly she wasn't. You've heard testimony about that. But she did the best she could, according to Dr. Lazaro, for Nicole Nachtman, the best way she knew how to parent. Ladies and gentlemen, children grow up in foster care and don't have parents doting love on them, and they don't go out and kill people. Just because you've had a hard life does not give you the right to kill people when you want to. It just does not. And the only reason we're even discussing much of this stuff with Miriam Deans and the raising of Nicole Nachtman is because they put forth a defense of battered child syndrome. Nicole Nachtman was not a child when this occurred. I want to remind you all of that. She was 21 years old. But they put forth this defense of battered child syndrome because it goes to self-defense. And I want to remind you also, ladies and gentlemen, this goes only as to the count involving Miriam Deans. I believe that's count 2 of the indictment. It only applies to her. Self-defense does not apply whatsoever to Robert Deans. It just does not. So this is put on to a self-defense instruction. Because in a self-defense instruction, you have to have a reasonable belief of bodily harm in order to defend yourself, basically. I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but that's pretty much how it goes. And you'll see the instruction, and the judge will read you the law. But with battered child syndrome, when you put that onto the self-defense instruction, it says you have to look at it from the mind of a battered child syndrome. But was it reasonable for a person under her circumstances to believe she was in fear of death or great bodily harm? And I submit to you it was not reasonable for her to believe that, for many reasons. Now, Dr. Lazaro has already told you she did not feel that what Nicole suffered, while she never excused it or said it was good, did not rise to the level of battered child syndrome. We talked about the physical abuse and how it was limited. All 3 doctors said it was limited. They came up with 3 instances in her entire 21 years of actual physical abuse that they would categorize as physical abuse. 3 in 21 years. Now, that's not to excuse that. That's not to say that Ms. Deans was ever right to do anything like that to her child. We are not excusing that. Okay, and I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm telling you is to tell you that Ms. Deans was correct in kicking her daughter for not answering her question or pushing her head down onto a table. None of that was correct. The question is, does it rise to the level of battered child syndrome? Dr. Lazaro explained to you, and let me remind you, even Dr. Heidi said, if it was just this physical abuse, I would say, no, this doesn't go to that level. Dr. Lazaro explained to you how it's a process where they get battered. Then there's an apology. Then it comes back up again and get battered again. And it's a cycle. What have we heard about here? One when she was 3 years old or in 3rd grade. I can't remember which one it was. And then one when she was in 10th grade and one when she was in 11th grade. Those were the 3 instances we're talking about. So Dr. Heidi knows that that's not going to be enough for battered child syndrome. So she looks at other avenues and other areas where Miss Nachtman might have been abused. So she turns to the verbal and the psychological. And yes, there is some evidence of that as well. there is some evidence you heard from Joseph Carey that the mom could be kind of abrasive and say mean things to them from time to time. He never said ever heard her say one thing to Nicole. He said she would say things like that. That's who she is. But he could not say a specific instance that he remembers her ever saying anything like that to Nicole. Because I want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that majority, just the 3 instances of violence and all of the psychological and verbal abuse you heard from, especially the verbal abuse, all came from the self-reporting of Nicole Nachtman. All of it. A woman we know who has no trouble lying to get out of trouble. No trouble at all. She'll fake her grades. She'll buy a storage unit for a bike. She'll tell detectives that she's been in Florida State for more than 2 days. So we're to rely on this skank and all these other words that were uttered to her at specific times in her life as true. Y'all can weigh that for what it is. But does that, all of that combined, still arise to the level of a battered child? You have other evidence you can look at aside from the words of Nicole Nachtman, and that is those emails. I urge you to look through those emails. And I'm sorry, I call them emails. I do this all the time. They're texts. I get them confused in my head. Okay. But I would ask you to look through those. And I think what you will see is that it's a normal back and forth relationship between a mother and daughter. Now, it wasn't loving, but we've already established that Miriam Deans was not a loving type, not one to show affection openly like that. But if you read through them, you'll see silly things like, oh, so-and-so's bringing a present for you, and da-da-da-da. And then she'll say, are you mad at me? And Miriam Deans replies, I could never be mad at you, Nicole. You'll find that text in there. I could never be mad at you, Nicole. That is hard evidence that you can look at and see for yourself. You know, and I want you all to remember this too. You heard from Dr. Lazaro that her mom was trying to do the best for Nicole. And some of these things, I think some of us would agree, is probably inappropriate. Certainly, some of these fat shaming comments that we hear. But if you look at the text, they're not fat shaming. It's a nurse saying, this is what your weight should be. Remember, don't eat after 7. Things that a mom might say to help a child or a young adult to keep their weight down. Remember, she's a nurse. She never says, you're getting fat, Nicole. Not a single text in there that says anything like that. The liposuction, Nicole was not a child then. I want y'all to remember that. She was over 18 when she got the liposuction. And she had a choice in that. No doctor would ever perform a procedure without.
Objection to facts, not in evidence.
I'll sustain, move on.
All right. You are hearing from the defense the worst moments of the relationship between Miriam Deans and Nicole Nachtman. Miriam Deans isn't alive right now to tell you or explain to you or give you her side of what happened.
Oh my goodness.
In some of these moments in frustration when she might have hurt Nicole, I'm sure if she were alive today, she may regret. But this is a 21-year picture, and you're only seeing these brief moments of this time. But none of it arises to the level of battered child. The defense wants to downplay the things her mom got her. Try to say that the state is saying it's a perfect life. I'm not saying it's perfect, but her mom did provide for her in a great way. She worked hard to provide for her. She gave her things she needed. She needed a car to get around. You got a car, Nicole. She got Florida prepaid. That was, Florida prepaid takes time to pay for. She got her computers when she needed computers. She tried to put her in schools that she thought would be good for her. Family may have objected, but remember, it's not the family's choice. And you are not here to judge her choice of where she put Nicole in school.
No.
You're here to judge whether that abuse arose to the level of battered child syndrome, and then whether, with that, it was reasonable for Nicole Nachtman to believe that she was in fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. Don't forget, she could have left.
Yes, she could have.
If she was so scared she had her room, she could have been in Tallahassee miles away from the door.
That's what I said.
She chose to stay. Why?
Why?
By that point in time, Nicole Nachtman had already made the decision in her head that she was done with her mom. She wanted her out of her life, and this was the way she was going to do it.
Yep.
I know she'd already killed Bob, but that's only one body. She could have moved on and saved. But no, she because her plan was to kill her mom, she had to follow it through to the end.
Gotta commit.
Even Miriam Deans does something that could easily be perceived as something really good. She shows up at her child's school to pick her up. Nicole thinks Bob's coming. And she even plays along. Oh yeah, Bob's on his way up there. He'll come get you. And then she comes out. Now, how do we know, ladies and gentlemen, that's not just a fun thing that she wanted to do? Surprise her daughter, spend some time driving back down to Tampa with her daughter. How do we know? We don't. But what does Dr. Ewing say? Oh, she's gaslighting her. If that doesn't show you bias on the part of that doctor, I don't know what does. He's making a judgment about Miriam Dean's decisions without having any idea. That is bias. You have to look at his opinion very carefully. And I confronted him. I said, do you have any evidence or any reason to believe she was just coming to surprise her? Well, no. Well, then why did you tell this jury a little while ago she was gaslighting her? They complained that she never went up to Tallahassee to see her. Well, there she did. And instead of being like, oh, she did a good thing, well, she was gaslighting her. Miriam can't win for losing. But I remind you, this case
Can't wait for Lucy.
is not about Nicole Nachtman versus Miriam Dean. It's about
That's
state
not,
versus Nicole
that's
Nachtman.
not what he
Please
said.
keep that in mind. So when you look at self-defense, you need to look and see what were the circumstances. What happened at that moment? All three doctors testified that Nicole Nachtman never says that her mom was coming at her in an aggressive or angry fashion. She never says that.
Nope.
Her mom was surprised. The trap had
What
worked.
the fuck are you doing here?
Perfect.
I would have probably said the same thing to my kid if I thought he was supposed to be somewhere else.
It worked perfect. If her mom pulled up and seen the car, her mom might have been coming in like a little more aggressively, like, what's going on? No, she didn't want that. She wanted to catch her mom right off guard, and she did. And there's no evidence whatsoever that the mother did anything to give her a reason to believe she was in fear of death or great bodily harm. Nothing. She didn't want the repercussions of her mom yelling at her, mad at her because she didn't do what she was supposed to do with the housing. It's had nothing to do with her fear of death or great bodily harm. And there's no evidence, ladies and gentlemen, not a scintilla, not even a single piece of evidence to show any sort of aggressive action on the part of Miriam Deans. Nothing. Self-defense doesn't apply here. Not even at all. It's not even a close call.
No, they did not prove that, in my opinion.
So much talk. Oh, let me also talk about this when it comes to this self-defense. Miss Hersequel here talked a few minutes ago about the bullets in the
Miss Hersequel.
And yes, there was one within 2 feet. The muzzle right here, they're about 2 feet from the body. And that was the one that was directly to the torso. The one that goes straight front to back. I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that was clearly the first shot. It's also the shot that the medical examiner said had the most blood coming out of the areas where it was shot. So clearly it was the first shot. And what does she say happens after that? Her mom screams. What do the neighbors say they heard? Scream. It was a weird scream, like an agony scream. So that's the first shot. In all likelihood, what is Miriam Deans going to do? She's going to turn from the threat. And you heard Wesley Rowe and Elizabeth Ray both say they heard a bang and then bang, bang, 2 quick succession bangs. So the first one goes front to back and it's right here in the front and it's pretty close range. The next one comes in her side and goes from her left side across her body. And then there's one right in her head. It comes from the back of her head through her ear and comes out towards the front of her head. So her head was turned. She was trying to get away. She was trying to run for her life. But Nicole Nachtman was not going to let her get away. Not now, not anymore. She was done with her mom. And we can surmise this is the last wound because it had the least amount of blood in the areas where it traveled. And after this wound, the doctor said most likely she would collapse, which she did. Her arms were by her side. She clearly didn't even try and break her fall. And you see the bruising and the blunt impact. And he said there was very little on the contusion to show that there was much blood pressure left, if any. So, ladies and gentlemen, the last thing she saw in her life was that woman with a gun to her.
That's sad.
This is not self-defense. But what about Bob? You know,
Bob didn't
I
even
said
see it
easily,
coming.
If not more of this case has all been discussion about Miriam Deans and Miriam Deans and Miriam Deans. What about Robert Deans?
Mary means.
Talk about an innocent, complete innocent man. He had nothing. He did nothing wrong. His only thing he did wrong was to stand in the way of her mom. No evidence he ever abused her. No evidence he ever yelled at her. No evidence he ever did anything to Nicole Nachtman. He put her on his health insurance. We know that because according to Eric, Academy records, he's on his health insurance.
Whose health insurance
He's a
am I
stepfather.
on?
How close he was to her? I don't know. There's no telling. George Lear, I'm sorry, not George Lear, David Lear.
I guess
the
I was
cousin
on
who
their
gave her
health
money, says
insurance.
They all seem fine. I'd be over and visit 2 or 3 times a week. Now, Eric and George never talked about going to visit the house. You never heard any testimony from them about going to visit the house and see what the house was like. But David did. David got to know Robert Deans. He would help him with projects around the house. Said he was a very nice
When I
guy.
was on my
He's the one who
mom's
identified him on the picture
insurance,
in the
she
public video.
changed jobs.
So Robert was very nice. What did
And
he
they
do?
own their own
He-
business, so
he-
they would
But
have
standing in
private
the way of
insurance.
Her ultimate goal. That's all it was. She knew her mom was gone.
I don't
She was in the house with Robert Deans.
know. I was a child. How am I
And
supposed
according
to
to
know?
the testimony from the doctors, she was contemplating suicide. Am I going to kill myself? She had taken the gun out of the bedroom. And I encourage you to look at those pictures too. If you look at the empty gun case, you'll look and see that there's a novel inside it. It's a Stephen King novel. Why do you think that's there? Because she didn't want them to know that something might have been missing in case they moved the case. So it still had weight to it. That's smart.
Oh,
Suffering from some hallucination and delusion, they don't know what they're doing. She knew what she was doing.
clever. Clever little cat.
She takes that gun and thinks, am I going to kill myself? What does that tell you? Nicole Nachtman knows what a gun needed. She knows it kills. I mean, common sense tells you she does. She's a Florida State University student with average to above average intelligence. She knows what it does. So she decides for herself, no, I want to live. She walks out, comes up from behind Robert Deans and shoots him in the back of the head, kill him. Now let's talk a little bit about insanity because that's the defense they are attempting to prove to you. And remember, it is their burden to prove to you, by clear and convincing evidence. She is presumed sane. As she sits there right now, you're to presume her that she's sane, just like all of us. It's their duty and their job to convince you with clear, convincing evidence that she was not, that she was insane at the time of the offense.
They did not.
So let's start looking into that evidence. Mental infirmity. You'll see in a second. I'll put it up. You all have seen it a bunch of times already, so I know you're going to be very familiar with this when he gets back there with you. But it's important that you all understand it because it can become somewhat confusing. And that first line that they read, that you've read that a bunch of times, but a person is considered to be insane when, number one, she had a mental infirmity, disease, or defect. We agree. We're not contesting that. You heard so much evidence about is it schizophrenia, is it schizotypal personality disorder? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It could be schizophrenia. Dr. Lazaro was going to lose no money if she said, yeah, it's schizophrenic, but she's not insane because of blah, 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 blah. She could have diagnosed her with whatever she wanted. She diagnosed her with a mental disease or defect. So it doesn't matter. She wouldn't have lost any money anyway. Dr. Lazaro was bringing to you what she believed the evidence in her diagnosis to be. Pure and simple. But, in her opinion, it's not as severe as the defense would have you believe. She does not believe that Nicole Nachtman was suffering with delusions. She indicated that the delusion that they keep referring to is that her mom was going to kill her. She has made that up since as a justification for her actions. Nicole Nachtman does not want to think she's a bad person. So she is now justified by saying, well, I thought my mom was going to kill me. She says to the doctor in her statement, she says, you know, if she wasn't going to kill me before, once I kill Bob, then I know she's going to kill me. Dr. Lazaro explained to you that while she suffered some schizophrenic symptoms, and she was on the spectrum, was not as severe. And certainly not to the point of being psychotic. And she told you some of the things that no psychotic person, no person under a psychosis who has a belief in undergoing a psychotic episode could ever do. A person going to go into a psychotic episode does not have executive function, as she described, does not have the ability to think things through and do things. So what is she doing? What is there evidence that she did not have any psychosis at the time? She was actively speaking with her family members. She saw David after she killed her stepfather and while she was still planning to kill her mother. David said she seemed normal, had a normal conversation with her. She responded back to him in a normal fashion. She wanted money. He gave her the money. We wanted to see you again. And she gave him a big hug because she wasn't sure what she'd see. Because by that point, she had already killed Robert Dean, so she knew she was going to go away. No indication from him that she was acting out of sorts in any manner from her normal manner. He testified to that. She called her grandmother and told her grandmother goodbye. Said she was sorry she didn't get a chance to see her before she leaves. She handled that entire thing with FSU. I mean, she just killed her stepfather, and she's waiting her mom. And mom, okay, let me deal with this FSU thing. I gotta get now that I got my housing, I can get out of here. I'll go up there to FSU, and I'll make it seem like I've been there the whole time. And she goes through all the things she needed to do to get that housing done. Paid the money, got the forms in, did everything she needed to do. That is a person who's functioning with a clean mind, knows what she's doing, and knows how to do what she's doing. Everyone wants to make it out, well, I'm sorry, everyone. The defense wants to make it out that poor Nicole Nachtman couldn't take care of herself, couldn't do anything. She moved herself up to school every time. That's a pretty big deal. She did it all by herself. She drives herself up there. She moves herself in. That's pretty big. She went to London by herself. She couldn't clean. She couldn't take care of herself. She couldn't wash her clothes. Well, you heard from the first roommate, the first woman she testified actually during our case. We let her come in and have her testimony via Skype. And she said, yeah, she could do it. And sometimes she would. I would yell at her. She'd clean up for a little while, but then it would start to go back again. She was just lazy. This wasn't in her mindset to clean or be clean. But when there's blood everywhere, she can clean that up pretty good. When there's blood on let's clean that up pretty good. She can certainly clean that up. Nicole Nachtman, you had to clean. She's not this meek little girl who doesn't know how to do anything. That's not Nicole Nachtman. She was an average to above average intelligent 21-year-old woman. Nicole planned keeping the car out of the mother's view and parked it away from the house. That is very devious. It's devious to believe that you're setting the trap for her to begin with. But then where she parks, I mean, I urge you all to go back and look at this. She parks in an area almost 2 miles away, an area familiar to her because obviously that's where her brother lives. Her cousin David lives. But an area that's across Ehrlich Road in another subdivision so that when they hear the shots and the police start coming in like this, she won't be seen in her car leaving the area. She's on foot. Who knows where? She's hiding in bushes, running around trying to make sure she's not seen. They can make it all the way up here and then leave right out of here. There's a car never even being spotted around the area. That's smart. That's not someone who's insane who doesn't know what they're doing. Certainly not someone who's psychotic at the time.
Clever.
She went up to school, told her roommates to lie for her and say she was there if anyone asks. After the murder, she met with the police, and there's no evidence of any psychosis at all in the interview. You all saw that interview. She's oriented to time and place. She can speak with him pretty clearly. She understands his questions. In fact, he doesn't even get a chance to read Miranda. She immediately knows where he's going with that and says, I've been told by my family I should get a lawyer. Is that okay? He's like, yeah, okay. He hadn't even started telling her Miranda rights. She knew it. And then she went right back to the Ice Princess story. Now everyone keeps, the defense keeps bringing up, oh, look at her, she's talking about the Ice Princess. She just killed her mom and stepmom, her stepdad. She's talking about the Ice Princess. Well, what else is she going to talk about? Someone who's trying to cover her tracks, someone who doesn't want the police to know. She can sit there and say, I murdered them. You got me. It was terrible. No. So she can talk about things that interest her. She was into football. She'd be talking about football. You heard from Detective Nestor. It's very common when we're waiting around with the defendant who's invoked their rights that we just sit and we talk about other things, whatever is interesting to them. And to her, she's interested in that stuff. She gets on her Tumblr and writes stories. She loves the Ice Princess story. She's changed it. And she puts her own characters in it. That's her hobby. That's her interest. That's the thing she likes to do. The Elsa costume in the Elsa book. Do we know why she got the book? Maybe she got the book because she wanted some pictures of Elsa while she's trying to draw or put together her costume. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Lots of people cosplay, which is called where you dress in costume of different characters. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Cosplay.
There's no evidence of any psychosis in those phone calls that you just heard, is there? She understands what they're asking her. She's responding back. No evidence of any psychosis. She changed the Yahoo account when she was there. She learned how she got on to change the password. That's someone who's functioning very well up here, not someone who's manic and psychotic and doesn't know what's going on and what they're doing. All of those actions show she was not psychotic. Now, in some respects, ladies and gentlemen, most people who kill generally have some mental issues. those people who don't kill, you know, I mean, so it's common for people who kill to have mental issues. And I want to point you to a thing here that I think is important, because we are admitting she does have a mental illness. We're not contesting that. We understand that. It says, although insanity is a defense, mental or psychiatric conditions not constituting insanity are not defenses to any crime in this case. That's important, ladies and gentlemen, because if you believe she knew what she was doing, she knew the consequences, and she knew it was wrong, then she could be full-blown schizophrenic, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. She's still guilty. She's not insane. Just because you have a mental disease or defect does not make you insane. Please remember that when you go back there. Because this second half of this is what's important. This is what distinguishes it. Because lots of people have mental conditions, and just because you have a mental condition doesn't mean you have a right to kill. We've talked about the schizophrenic who's working as a lawyer. There are people with mental diseases and defects all around this country who are functioning, working properly, and not killing people because they know it's wrong. And so did she. She admitted it was wrong.
Exactly.
She admitted to Dr. Lazaro. Dr. Lazaro asked her, did you know? Or I think she said this, well, you knew killing your mom and stepdad was wrong, didn't you? She said, yeah, I did. In fact, Dr. Heidi said, yeah, that's wrong. She knew it was wrong. I don't contest that. She knew it was wrong. Who wouldn't admit it? Oh, like Dr. Ewan, the one with, I told you, a bias. Because listen to what he said. He wouldn't make an opinion about it. He says there's evidence to suggest she didn't know, or she knew it was wrong. There's evidence to suggest that. Ladies and gentlemen, there's not evidence to suggest that. There's evidence to scream that. There is so much evidence that she knew it was wrong. She was looking for help to cover up the murders for dangerous areas in Tampa, people in those places, so she could get a fake ID, so she could maybe get away. She knew she was going to be wanted. She lied to her family about when she was leaving. She talked to her mother while Bob Dean's body was right there in that house, and her mother was on her way saying, oh yeah, Mom, I'm up here, yeah, my roommates, I just met my roommates. She was covering up, she's lying, she moved her car a distance away, she cleaned the crime scene, she moved the body to the back room. She drove up to school. She talked about how she knew the police were coming. When she shot Bob Dean, she was scared because it was loud, and she was sure the police were going to come. Right after she shot him, she said, I thought, oh no, the police are going to come. Is that someone who knows it's wrong? Is that someone who knows what they're doing? And knows the consequence of what they're doing?
Sounds like it.
She lied to her uncle. She'd done nothing
She
wrong.
lied to her uncle.
I killed him. Mom's going to kill me, so I had to kill her.
What the hell's her uncle got to do with
And
it?
he's kind of there, so I had to kill him too.
Better
She thought she'd
leave
done
her
nothing wrong.
uncle alone.
Talked about it, but she didn't. She said, oh, no, I didn't do that. I mean, I've been up here. I've been up here. What evidence is there to show that she knew what she was doing? Because we've already discussed the wrongness. And by the way, she also got rid of the weapon. Someone who's not guilty or doesn't believe they've done anything wrong won't dispose of the weapon. Let's move on. So let's go back
It's not
to
an evidence.
where established wrongness.
What
And
he
there are
says
two
in
prongs,
closing
or
is
two
not
ways
an
to go.
evidence.
And Ms. Cersei Bulgaria told you, you can ignore that second one. Well, no, because if you find that she knew she was doing it, and she knew the consequences, then you have to find out whether or not she believed it was wrong. So yes, the state is asking you to look at all of it, not just these two, the whole thing. So going back to the first one, did she know what she was doing and its consequences? Now,
Judge, I'm going to object as a mistake of the instruction.
okay, so she did not know what she was doing. Okay, so did she know what she was doing, or did she know the consequences of what she was doing? Now, Dr. Heidi and I had a little argument about the legal definition of insanity. Because you heard Dr. Heidi basically changed her opinion. And she's going to split hairs with me, but I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, she knew what I was asking her back in that January hearing. At that time, insanity was not an issue in this case. So when I asked her on that January hearing those two questions, because I didn't really think it was an issue, but when I asked her those two questions, her response to me was, I said, did she know what she was doing? Was wrong? Oh, yes, she did. Did she meet the McNaughton standard of insanity? No, she did not. Basically, she was saying she was sane. But then she comes in before you and testifies and has changed that opinion now. But she wants to split hairs with me and say there's some other McNaughton standard that I don't know exists that doesn't include the term consequence. So I had to point her to a Supreme Court law. Now, this is a criminology professor at USF. She knows the law. So I had to point her to it. I said, it says consequence in here under the McNaughton standard in Florida. She goes, oh, I didn't know that's what you were referring to. So Dr. Heidi is completely wrong. And if you listen to my cross, I did get her to basically agree that she knew what she was doing when she was shooting a gun. The indictment reads that she killed Robert Deans by shooting him. So what is the action of doing that we're here to determine? Did she know what she was doing? The doing in the indictment is the shooting him. What is the consequence of shooting him? He was killed. It's that simple. The defense wants to extend consequences into penalties he might receive in the future, or she might receive in the future. That's not what this says. Use your common sense.
Ask the court to instruct that it's the law. I do read it.
I'm arguing with Judge.
his argument, ladies and gentlemen. I will remind you, though, that what the attorneys say is not evidence or the law. I will instruct you on the law. I will ask you to rely on your own recollection of the evidence in this case.
Use your common sense of what that means. What is the person doing in its consequence? Consequence is a synonym for result. What you're doing in the result. What she was doing was shooting Robert Deans in the back of the head. What was the result? What was the consequence? He was killed. It's that simple. Did she know when she was shooting him that she was going to kill him? Well, she told Dr. Lazaro that she shot and killed Bob instead of killing herself. She shot and killed Bob instead of killing herself. So she knew that by shooting him, she was going to kill him, the consequence. She told Dr. Lazaro that. Even Dr. Ewing came up with some weird theory that he believed the consequence she believed was that she should kill Robert Deans so that way her mother would kill her.
Objection, facts not evidence.
Simply remind the jury to rely on your own recollection of what the facts in the case are, and that what the attorneys say is not evidence.
Dr. Lazaro also says that she shot Bob once in the back of the head. That location is important. What does that tell you? She didn't shoot him in the back. She didn't shoot him in the leg. She didn't shoot him in the shoulder. She went right to the back of the head. So she knew where she was doing. She knew where she was putting that bullet. She told her brother, I shot Bob. I didn't think I could do it, but I did.
Shut up.
What does that tell you? She knew she was doing. She thought about it. She even says in that response, I didn't think I could do it. She was thinking about it. She knew what she was going to do. I didn't think I could do it. But I did. So let's say consequence doesn't mean killing it, but if you use the common sense thought process, didn't know what she was doing or its consequences. What are the consequences of what she did, shooting him while he was going to die? But let's say it's that she's going to get in trouble. How much do we know that Nicole Nachtman knew she was going to get in trouble? First thing she says, that tells the doctors, is that once she shot Bob, she was worried that the police were going to come. She took a couple of sleeping tablets.
That's true.
She also flees, obviously, the minute she shoots Miriam. She gets rid of the weapon. She heads up to Tallahassee. She lies to people. She lies to her. She lies to the people. She knows she's in trouble. She knows the consequences. She's an average to above average intelligence. She said goodbye to the people that were most important in her life. David, Laura, and Joey. She basically told them all her goodbye. She told Laura, you've been a good friend to me. She told Joey, I'm going to miss you, Joey.
That was her suicide.
In fact, would have you believe that she was suicidal, and that's why she said it.
Yeah.
Joey asked her, are you thinking of this? Oh, no. No. That's what she was. Ladies and gentlemen, a few more things and I'll sit down. One of the things that the judge is going to read you is an instruction that says because your decision should not be based because you feel sorry for anyone or are angry at anyone.
Except the defense attorney.
It's not necessary. Break with that over there.
I'm going to object. Improper argument.
Let's move on.
You've seen her. You've heard about her hard life growing up. You are not to decide this case because you feel sorry for anyone. So if you feel sorry for Nicole Nachtman because she had a rough life, but you believe she did it and she knew what she was doing, your verdict must be guilty as charged. And you do not decide the case because you're angry at anyone. Even if you're angry at Miriam Deans, even if you feel like she was a terrible mom, you don't. If you believe she did what she did and she knew what she was doing and she knew the consequences, she knew it was wrong, your verdict should be guilty as charged. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the work of someone who did not know what they were doing or the consequences or result of what they were doing or the wrongness. This was the work of a person with a mindset to rid their life of a burden for them. Someone who thought out and planned, granted not a mastermind, but clearly had some plan. Someone who tried to cover their tracks. Someone who killed two innocent, unarmed people by surprise. That someone, ladies and gentlemen, is Nicole Nachtman. We have no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that upon reviewing all the evidence in this case, you will return a verdict as charged, guilty of 2 counts of murder in the first degree.
Thank you. Well, this is jury instructions.
I'm now going to read you the final instructions. I want to let you know and read those final instructions. These actual instructions will go back into the jury room with you. You will have them when you are deliberating.
This is very long, and we've heard most of the important ones as far as like
Nicole Nachtman, the defendant in this case, has been accused of the crimes of murder in the first degree, premeditated with a firearm. In this case, Nicole Nachtman is accused of 2 counts of murder in the first degree, premeditated with a firearm. Murder in the first degree includes the lesser crimes of murder in the second degree and manslaughter, all of which are unlawful. A killing that is excusable or was committed by the use of justifiable deadly force is lawful. If you find Robert Deans and or Miriam Dean were killed by Nicole Nachtman, you will then consider the circumstances surrounding the killings in deciding if the killings were murder in the first degree or were murder in the second degree or manslaughter, or whether the killing was excusable or resulted from justifiable use of deadly force. The killing of a human being is justifiable homicide and lawful if necessarily done while resisting an attempt to murder or commit a felony upon the defendant, or to commit a felony in any dwelling house in which the defendant was at the time of the killing. The killing of a human being is excusable and therefore lawful under any one of the following circumstances. Number 1, when the killing is committed by accident and misfortune in doing any lawful act by lawful means with usual ordinary caution and without any unlawful intent. Or 2, when the killing occurs by accident and misfortune in the heat of passion upon any sudden and sufficient provocation. Or 3, when the killing is committed by accident and misfortune resulting
Just
from
sounds
a
weird
sudden
when they're
combat
talking normal.
with a
It sounds
dangerous
like you're
weapon
really
is
slow.
Fine culpable negligence for you. As I have said, every person has a if the defendant knew that what she was doing violated societal standards
We don't need to listen
in
to
the
this.
case or anything like that. You are absolutely allowed to do any of that. Watch if there's any reports related to the case. You're welcome to do that. If you'd like to remain behind and wait while the jury deliberates, you're welcome to do that. Let me ask, Will, did we get how many lunches? We have a lunch for you. If you want to take that with you and leave, you can do that. If you want us to find you a room, a private room
he's
to eat
getting
it
rid of
in,
the
we will
alternate.
do that for you. We greatly appreciate you. If you want to call to find out what the verdict was, you can do that. But most importantly, again, we want to thank you for your very important civic
He is
duty.
such a nice
And
judge.
I will release you at this time. All rise for the alternate juror.
See,
The alternate juror has exited. Everyone may be seated. First, is there any objections to the instructions as given?
Just to the requested instructions as to self-defense on Robert Dean and premeditation instructions for tonight.
All right, so to the stuff that wasn't given, but what was written, I understand, don't want to waive any objections to anything you requested that I didn't give. And Ms. Nachtman, I have a question of you at this time, ma'am. You don't have to stand, but are you satisfied with the services of your attorneys? All right, thank you very much. Anything
absolutely.
from either side before we go into recess?
So you can't appeal and
Okay.
say
All right.
ineffective
We
use,
will, be in
ineffective
recess until we
counsel.
either have a question or a verdict from the jury. Thank you all again.
Okay, next. This is it, y'all. This is the sentencing and the verdict. So, yeah. What do we think? What do we think? I know what I think, and I know what I think should be. So let's see. Like she has no personality. Like I know they're not supposed to, I guess, but damn. Like this girl has no, she just sits there.
We're going to go back
all
on the record.
hunchback.
Let the record reflect everyone is present, including the defendant, Ms. Nachtman. We'll give her a moment to get
Like we're
situated.
bothering her. Just straight bothering her.
All right, I brought everyone back because the bailiffs have indicated that the jury has reached a verdict. Is there anything from the defense before I bring the jury in? Yes. Is there anything from the state before I bring the jury in? Thank you. Bring the jury in.
Ready to?
You're ready.
All rise. Jury entering.
All members of the jury are present and seated. Everyone else may be seated this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. I usually wait till the very end to thank you for your hard work and dedication But I think under the circumstances this morning, it's appropriate to thank you perhaps now and when I release you. But it's my understanding, the bailiffs has indicated to me that the jury has reached a verdict. So my first question is normally whether you've elected a four-person, but we know from prior communications that that is juror number one. Is that correct? And juror number one, do you have, well, first of all, has this jury reached a unanimous verdict in this case?
Yes.
Do you have the verdict form, juror number one? If you could please give that verdict form to the bailiff, Deputy Oliver. Thank you to the four-person. I will review the verdict and then I will give it to the clerk to be published. Ms. Nachtman, if I could please have you stand. And if my clerk will please publish the verdict.
Yes, Judge. State of Florida versus Nicole Nachtman, case number 2015 CF 12204. We, the jury find as follows to count one of the charge. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, the defendant personally discharged a firearm? Yes. During the commission of the offense, and as a result of the discharge of the firearm, was death caused to Robert Deans? Yes.
Well, there you go.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count two of the charge. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes.
She is guilty
During the commission
on
of the offense,
both
did the defendant personally discharge a firearm?
two first-degree
Yes.
murder charges.
During the commission of the offense and as a result of the discharge of the firearm, was death caused to Miriam Deans? Yes. So say we all dated this 3-day August 2019. Daniel Maudlin, four-person of the jury.
Ms. Nachtman and defense counsel, you may be seated at this time. Would either side like the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what that means is my clerk is going to ask each of you individually whether the verdict that was published represents your verdict in this case. You may proceed.
Yes, Judge. Daniel M., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Mary F., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Jimmy D., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Jeremy S., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Heather Z., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Anna O., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Timothy F., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Anthony R., is this your verdict?
Yes.
James P., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Ricky C., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Gabriella G., is this your verdict?
Yes.
And Patsy H., is this your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anything from the state before I release the
half.
jury?
No, Your Honor.
Is there anything
Oh,
from the
less than
defense before the
half
jury is
of a
released?
jury woman.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is the time
Half
when
there.
I say thank you very much for your hard work and your dedication in this case. This was a very long trial. You gave us your undivided attention. You came here every day and you worked hard, and you worked very hard in the end with the verdict until this late hour. Appreciate your service. I'm going to thank you on behalf of the attorneys, the parties, the judges here in the 13th Judicial Circuit, and the citizens of Hillsborough County. I want to let you know now that I will release you from all of my prior restrictions about not doing any research related to the case, about not talking.
You can
about
look
the
it
case
up
with
now.
others. When you go home, I'm sure friends, family
She
members,
has nothing.
people at work
She's
are gonna
doing
wanna talk to you or ask you
nothing.
questions. It's
She
up to
has
you, but you are free to talk to them now
no.
about the case. Additionally, I want to let you know about your deliberations. They carry with them a very special protection, and you cannot be forced to talk about your deliberations except by court order. However, if you wish to talk about the jury deliberations that happened back in the jury room, you are free to do that. That is up to you. We're going to have the bailiffs walk with you. It's dark outside. We're going to have the bailiffs walk you to your cars in the garage. We have letters for you that say that you were here both weeks. And at this time, again, I want to thank you very much for your very important civic duty. I said in the very beginning that Abraham Lincoln said a very long time ago that the greatest service you can give to your country in a time of non-war is service on a jury. I still believe that today, and we appreciate you very much. Thank you all, and have a very safe trip home. All rise for the jury. Jury has exited. Everyone may be seated. I'll ask the state, is there any reason why we can't proceed to sentencing at this time? Would you like the victims present? Would you like a sentencing date? Or would you like us to proceed to sentencing? All right, is there any reason from the defense why we should not proceed to sentencing at this time?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Nachtman, the jury having found you guilty as charged on counts 1 and 2, I am going to adjudicate you guilty at this time on each of those counts and sentence you to life in Florida State Prison on each count to run concurrently. I will impose all standard court cost fees and fines. You will have 30 days to appeal the judgment and sentence entered against you. Thank you.
Will you appoint the public defender for purposes of the appeal, please?
I will appoint the public defender for purposes of the appeal. If you'll submit me an order on JAWS, I will sign it as soon as it is submitted. Is there anything else before we conclude court?
Nothing from the state judge.
Anything from the defense?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, again, thank you all very much. Have a safe trip home. Oh, I gotta sign. Right. I'll skip her out.
Like she just has like nothing.
I don't foresee any problem with that.
I want, I'm here, they'll just have to check with the bailiffs because she'll be at conference.
I'm sure Sally.
Yeah,
Sally.
and Sally can get in.
Okay, that's, yeah, I know Sally will find.
Yeah, I have no problem with you leaving it here. It should be safe.
Fingerprint card. Did they do fingerprints?
We'll make sure that, they have.
Well, y'all, that was it. That's it. That's all. That's all she wrote. The lady has sung. She is guilty. She is guilty on both charges. On both charges. She will spend the rest of her life in the prison. Will she appeal it? Probably. What will happen? Who knows? But there you go. They tried for the insanity. They did not win. I was not convinced. Like I said, I have seen the schizophrenia. Ma'am, you weren't convincing. Just because you talk to yourself a little bit here and there. I mean, you could have it. I'm not saying that you don't. I'm not an expert. Like I said, I just work in the field. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I do not have the training to diagnose anybody. But I've seen people with schizophrenia and they cannot, in a psychotic state, being symptomatic, they cannot function as well as you were functioning at that time. They cannot function well enough to fax and email and clean up and cover up and do the things that you were doing. Like, that's, come on. And especially there's time in between the things. I don't know. Maybe talk to somebody that actually has the schizophrenia and can do that. But I mean, I do believe, she has personality disorders. I would not, like I said in my last video, I forget, personality disorders exist. Honestly, in some cases, you hear a lot about the narcissistic personality disorders and stuff like that. But you forget that there's a whole trove of other personality disorders. So, you forget those are out there. And I don't know. But I think they got it right on this one because I did not see, there was no self-defense either. Defense did not do a great job. I mean, I don't know. I wonder if there was ever some sort of plea deal anywhere in here and they just never took it, or if there was ever something else. Because they really fucked her. Well, she fucked herself, I guess. I don't know. But she got what she, But again, I mean, you kind of feel bad for her because she is, like her personality disorders are not like a mean personality disorder. Like she doesn't function well around people. And I get that. I mean, I'm not And I'm not one to function well around people either. So, I mean, I get that, but you can't kill people. Carl, that kills people. You can't do that. So, I mean, no matter how mean they are to you, you can't kill them. You can kill them with kindness. Or just tell them to shut the fuck up. I don't know. But anyway, that's it. That is all she wrote for Nicole Nachtman. I would assume she is serving her time in the Florida State Department of Corrections, which Florida is a death penalty state, which I'm assuming this was not a death penalty case. So that was never on the table. I guess some aren't. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But they never brought that up. So, and she was sentenced right to there. And again with a concurrent and consecutive. I don't know. Is she sentenced to one, effectively one life sentence for both of them? Or 2 life sentences back to back? Why can't you just say it like that? 2 life sentences back to back. Or together. Make it easy. Or, why do they have to have both start with C's? Consecutive and concurrent. I'm going to have to figure out a way for me to remember that. Because I am too old and have been dealing with this stuff for too long to not understand that by now. But anyway. All right. Well, that's all for now, folks. Join me on another trial adventure at some point. Not sure what's next, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. Okay. Well, it's been real. And don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. Let me know what you think. If you have any trial suggestions, let me know. All right. I shall see you on the next one. Bye.